So this event tonight is creating the NovaDreamer and the history of lucid dreaming tech. And yeah, Craig is a very accomplished individual, especially in the lucid dreaming space here. Kind of part physicist, part researcher, part inventor, part dreamer, part musician, graduate of McGill University, and he worked closely with the group over at Stanford. Stephen LaBerge and that group in the early days, which was very interesting timing for lucid dreaming technology, as you'll find out, during Craig's talk today, because he was heavily involved in designing the NovaDreamer, one of the first lucid dreaming technology devices. So he'll talk all about that in his presentation, and kind of the history of lucid dreaming technology. And he also has a recent book that's been published, the Dreams Behind the Music. So it's a variety of stories about people that have got inspiration and ideas and ability to boost their career through dreaming. So you see a picture of the book there on the screen, and it's dreamsbehindthemusic.com. So with that, I will hand it over to Craig. He's got a separate presentation here, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then yeah, Craig, feel free to take it away.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Brian. Thanks for offering the chance to share some of my passion here, maybe some of the experiences life has honored me with, and also kudos, just like your style, and I think bringing together people with like a good, like life helpful mission, which is not always the case. Deserves a little bit of kudos and honoring, and thanks to everybody here for hopefully enjoying maybe a laugh or two and perhaps an insight if I'm lucky from what I share tonight. By the way, the cover of my book is behind the image of me on that little slide you showed, so it is behind the dreamer, dream behind the music book. I like it.
Some unintended symbolism there.
I know, a little wink. Maybe I should do my reality check earlier or throughout. But yeah, thanks for the intro. I'll tell a little bit about me and maybe some of my personal journey and professional journey. Share a little bit about the NovaDreamer, which I guess is our core topic, and other sort of closely related technologies, because as Brian mentioned, there's quite a few now. And then I'll offer a few more general ideas of maybe where some of technology can bring us for consciousness development, I guess lucidity, generally speaking, in life, of course, but also especially in dreams while we're asleep. So first off, I just start with this interesting idea, and that is, what does our culture really have to bring? Different than, let's say, many native cultures around the world who use dreaming still as their practices for health, tribal rituals, insight, foretelling the future, etc. And pretty effectively, by the way, or it wouldn't have kept. All the Asclepian healing temples used it for healing for 1,600 years, etc., etc. So what can we bring new besides like Tibetan practices or India yogis who use a lot of these? What do we have? Well, our culture, let's say maybe industrialized world, has technology. Maybe a couple other things here, but one of the main ones, technology. So why not use our gift, or one of our developments anyways, and serve back to the main essential channel of growing, expanding our minds, helping everybody, and hopefully having a little bit of fun along the way. And we're doing that well. And I think one of the focuses of the group, and has been mine personally and professionally, is aiming towards like really personal development, exploration, inside info, inside experiences. So you'll see a lot of my experiences and shares tonight are about what I call subjective science. I made up a phrase. Hope that's okay. Subjective scientist is somebody like you, like me, who gets to explore first person in dreams, because until we get some, so let's say, a little more advanced technologies, it's usually pretty much a first person exploration that we later report about, which is different from all our communal waking, I guess, agreed upon, more or less agreed upon physical world experiences. And that's the big difference. So technology to help maybe bridge that gap a little bit, but at least get the info out, get us conscious. Let's start improving the data throughput from dreams to waking. I liken it to, and I sort of coined a phrase called the inner net. So technology to help us connect with the inner net. It's kind of like the internet, but I think I'm allowed to make that joke because my family name is Webb, right? So forgive the bad puns today if I share a few. Let's see if I can do a screen share. It seemed to work before. I kind of got this new program going here. So window, and I can sort of tell it to you a little bit more visually. So I'm not just boring you with my face all night. Okay, just maybe somebody give me a quick mic over the mic because I can't see you anymore. Did that page come up?
Yep. It says creating the NovaDreamer. I see it.
Yeah, okay, there with a few links if you want to explore a little bit of my stuff more. So I guess not obvious there, but on the bottom of the page is a Dreams Foundation, a nonprofit foundation that I've run for, I think, 25 years now, maybe a little more. Acted pretty actively for at least 15, 20 of those years. That really has the same message as what I'm sharing with you tonight. Bring helpful info, inside info, maybe statistical research info out to people that it can benefit, hopefully. So that's been the mission there, personally, professionally, and I guess my passion too. A little bit more about how I got on this journey or this path. That's a younger Craig there. Probably not my best business clothes or the business hat there going on. As a canoe guide, I was an adventurer, love whitewater, still love whitewater for many years. So maybe it's not a surprise, but actually I had a very powerful near-death experience. And other than my diploma at McGill, which of course was in some ways a near-death experience, I actually got stuck under a whitewater raft. I'll give you a little visual here if you can see my face. So kind of stuck. Oh, just a quick check. For the presenting screen, am I showing on the side, Brian, or is it just the main?
Yeah, you're showing on the side, to the right side.
So you can see a little bit. So I got stuck under the raft, whitewater rafting, because I didn't really have enough time to gasp for air. It was a surprise submersion, sort of falling off the back there in Quebec City, which is in Canada, where I'm from. And I guess, I didn't have lots of fears about it. So I would sit on the back of the raft because it's kind of like the bus. That's where the best bumps are and the most fun. And I guess from other experiences, you fall off. But this time I got stuck under the raft with my helmet and life jacket. But, like I said, no air. So, a bit of fight and flight for maybe 5-10 seconds, bumping into the raft. And then a very strange thing, like fight and flight sort of dissolved. Simple single thought. I'm kind of going there now, so it's authentic. I just think this thought, wow, I'm dying right now. This is it. Like, they game over. And there wasn't really fear. That was gone. There was a little bit of surprise, like, oh, it's peaceful to die. But the main feeling was peaceful, expansive, a little curious, but mostly peace. So that was kind of a pretty magical moment. I describe it a bit slower here than it happened. But I guess cut to next scene. I don't exactly remember. It's more of a guess in my memory. But I believe the guide must have pulled me out, put me back on the raft, probably coughed up a little bit of water. And then, cut to, I did raft the rest of the day pretty much as normal, except I started having that really rich peace percolate into my waking moments. Then I started having 10 dreams a day, recalled easily. And I wasn't really into dreams before that. Started having lucid dreams right after that. Clear, consciousness during sleep. Like, what? They didn't tell me about that in physics class. Super clear and very specific premonitions coming true. Okay. They didn't tell me about precognition or precognitive dreams. So I guess there's some stuff I need to explore. A little more first person. So for a while, here he is. This is a younger Craig on the top of a mountain here. It's actually a little side fact. It's the point the farthest away from the center of the earth. Anybody, any guesses? You'd have to come on the mic. Any guesses? It's a bit of a trick question, so I'll give you a hint there. It's not what you might first think. Nobody. It's actually in Ecuador. And why is it not Everest, which some people do guess? Because Ecuador is on the equator and the earth bulges a little bit. And you'll notice how I said it was the point the farthest away from the center of the earth, not the highest above sea level. So there I am. And I like the symbolism of that picture on Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador, because it sort of shows what I was starting to do. I wanted to stay grounded in my life and not throw out my science and physics training, my degree in physics, but include some of these first person, like amazing experiences that as over time started checking, other people were having too, lucid dreams, premonitions, and other kinds of crazy things that weren't in the normal model that I'd been taught. So 10 dreams a day with all these experiences, I just had to keep following. A little bit like Luke Skywalker here, exploring, I guess, above and below the line. I guess there's a little fun comic about my work. Hey, no wonder Norton has those fancy highfalutin dreams of his, because like me at the time, he's kind of wired up, in that case, to a battery. Probably not the ultimate way to have a peaceful sleep. But anyways, a fun comic. And there I was, I got access from a close friend to some really cool, I guess, biofeedback gear. And in this case, I just used it for monitoring. And at home, was able to track my sleep and cycles, brain waves, and muscle tonus, and probably about 15 different measures. So I thought that was pretty cool. Tracked some nights. And don't forget, I'm not really in the sleep lab yet. This is just my own experimentation. And then as luck and life would have it, I'll tell the story a little bit after. But here's a quick image of it. I ended up at the Stanford University Research working alongside Dr. LaBerge, who many of you might have heard of or know. And that's a younger Craig with a little beard, waking up from a lucid dream in the actual lab where it was scientifically proven, lucid dreaming. And then later helping with some of the research and putting subjects in there and different things with the data. And then, of course, working on the developments like the NovaDreamer, which we'll get to shortly. Just a little more of my history. I also did some interesting research at Sacré-Cœur. This is you can't see too much of it there, but that's the hospital sleep lab at Sacré-Cœur Hospital in Montreal. And one of the things I was practicing often in my dreams, and I think at the lab and some dreams, was swimming. I was a big swimmer. Like I said, I loved water, as you saw by my canoe guide photo. So I guess I was lucky to have two places, and at the time, and even now, there's not so many places in the world that are studying lucid dreams. At the time, I think this might have been two of the three. So I got really lucky for the two places I was called to, I guess, life calling. So here's, I used the word there, I'll just step back a sec. I guess I came back to quote unquote normal life after Stanford, which I'll detail more in a second, but I came back to Canada and said, wow, how could I bring some of these research findings, some of the techniques, some of the applications out to more people, because it seems like they're, first of all, fascinating, and they're amazing experiences of fun and like exciting, but there's some really practical, how to resolve nightmares, health, how to improve health, and how to get creative insights and other stuff that I'm sure you've heard of. So at the time when it wasn't really lucid dreaming, nobody knew what that word meant. I ended up sort of having a vision dream. I like to call it a calling dream. Of course, I'm calling that in retrospect, but I did fall asleep with a very clear intention of, wow, how could I sort of use my gifts and bring some of this stuff out to the world? And there, in a powerful vision dream, I ended up seeing that, I guess a future or a little bit older Craig speaking around the world on different stages in high schools, presenting, performing music. I guess, oops, there we go. Sort of business world, I guess different conferences, etc. And I guess many media. So sharing some of these, I guess, insights, some of the research findings with many people via different outreach methods. And when the calling dream like this comes, it's sort of like a link, you don't get the whole future is not there. You get like something you can click on, you can start researching, reading, learning, take a little action after action, and then later eventually maybe get to some of those aspects of that future. In this case, I clicked on many links and followed through and ended up being able to at least follow some of those paths pretty well. Here's a little personal history as related to the NovaDreamer, so I can focus a little. I had designed and programmed and built many logic CPU circuits. Part of my degree in physics was electronics. So I had a lot of that under my belt. But don't forget, at the time we're talking, for those who know these things, I know there's some electronics enthusiasts on the call, that I was working with like actual big Scotty, like actual pins on chips. We called them little centipedes. For those of you who remember plug-in chips, no surface mount stuff for another 15 years. and all kinds of code, programming many things. This is just a little side story that I actually have never shared, I don't think, publicly, but I thought people tonight might like it. Well, I was doing some of this programming. I was doing some programming for the Apple II. I discovered a hardware bug in the Apple II Plus's processor. It actually still has a bug, the 6502. It's not a probably too often like come across bug, but I did notice it, and it was pretty significant. And one software protection algorithm actually used the bug to throw off people who were following them. So there's some fun stories in the logic and the electronics, but it's a long road to go down. So we'll just mention it briefly there, that I had a little precursor to sort of landing at Stanford. I did have my first lucid dream well before arriving at Stanford, right after, or a little bit after, maybe within the year after my raft experience. I had read a book by Richard Bach. Some of you might know the author, Jonathan Siegel, and Illusions, and Bridge Across Forever, and a few others. And I thought, hey, that's fun. Richard tried to meet his wife above their bed, while they're sleeping, whatever that means, meet them, I guess in some out-of-body state. I didn't really have the language, but I thought, that's cool. So I tried it. And the first night, I had a lucid dream. I thought, whoa, nobody told me about this. That's fun. So sort of seemed like, what? This is there for the asking? We got to learn more about this. And then a little segue. Not too many people know this. I don't think I've ever shared it publicly too. That's why I asked you tonight, Brian, about the girl named Jennifer. But somebody named Jennifer, who I actually don't know their last name, worked at Lucidity Institute before I arrived there. And I had done a few experiments, I guess submitted some findings and I guess write-ups for Nightlight, which is Lucidity Institute's newsletter, or I guess their main publication at the time anyway. And the person, Jennifer, said, okay, anybody who has submitted at least 3, I guess, participant feedbacks or I guess data can have a free year of, I guess, Lucidity subscription, the Nightlight newsletter subscription, which is interesting because at the time on a low budget, I wasn't going to resubscribe, but then I got a free year. So I said, okay, sure, no problem. And it was in that year that I saw a little ad in the newsletter. It said, hey, looking for somebody to, I think, answer phones and maybe some things like that weren't really related. But, I ended up, one thing led to another, interviewed, and went down there and got the job. Later, it turned into a lot more than just answering the phones. Another related point, not too many people are aware of, because I don't really share a lot of the stuff I'm sharing tonight publicly, but my thesis topic for my undergrad degree was actually on EEG pattern recognition, because I was quite interested in this stuff. And I actually reached out to Lucidity Institute to say, hey, is there any records or data you can send me so I can do some automated, maybe we can create an algorithm to actually detect when someone's going lucid or when they're going into the right phase of sleep to go lucid, which I assumed they were working on. And I think that was before the devices came public, so I didn't know that they were working on. So they didn't answer me, or I don't remember exactly. I don't think I got a reply. So I just ended up doing it on epileptic seizures. And it was just to honor, I think, a pretty major person in the space, Dr. John Gottman, who was my supervisor. And they did use and were quite interested in what we found to sort of recognize epileptic seizure onset, electronically before it sort of manifested physically, which I think has its value in life. Certainly ours were just early findings, but seemed of interest. And then I guess ended up at Lucidity, designing NovaDreamer at the Stanford research, doing research in the lab. And I developed or helped seed, I guess, the ideas for different aspects of the NovaDreamer. I'll just mention them because maybe not too many people know. There was the computer interface, NovaDreamer computer interface, that allowed the mask to connect to computer. There was Dream Speaker. I guess I should say it in present tense. They're still out there, but not too many copies were made. That allowed a voice message to play. And this wasn't in the days of MP3. This was actually like an analog voltage, a chip that remembered analog voltages for you electronics. Had a series of, I guess, buckets, if you know what that is, in there, remembering like a voice, a little short voice phrase. And then the PEST, which was an interesting personal electronic state tester, PEST, and a pest. It's a fun word that ends up sort of delivering occasional vibrations during the day as reality checks. You know, am I dreaming? So some fun devices, and there's a few technologies that are a little bit less known about, but still connected with lucid dreaming and the NovaDreamer, I guess most of them. And this is still my sort of personal path. After that, started publishing many things, had a show on BBC, and one of the things I first published and got the phrase and the word out there was Lucid Living article, Lucid Living in This Waking Dream. It was published in a big national publication and others after that. And I guess I was lucky. David Lynch's researcher called and started asking all kinds of questions. And I didn't know they were working on Mulholland Drive and some other movies at the time too. So it was nice to get some feedback that people found some of what I was writing and interested in myself, that they found it interesting. Just a little side note. Actually, in Sacré-Cœur lab, where I did some research, I signaled from a dream with leg kicks, which we found kind of interesting. You know, the big muscle groups are generally pretty much turned off, but you can actually detect the little signals, I guess, if you know the research, like Laberge kind of clenched his wrists in one of the tests to spell his initials in Morse code. So we did some leg kicks, and they showed up well, so that was fun. I'll maybe tell that story, St. Joseph's, later if we have time. But one of the lucid dreams was really cool at the lab there. I also have designed many, or at least a number of many other devices and a number of other sensors and biofeedback technologies, some with pretty big names around the world. So I guess it was in my mix as a passion and as a profession and maybe as a calling to sort of have some of these things come together in one person here. A little bit of science and a bit of first-person exploration. And then ended up touring high profile because I wanted to get the word out. And I did follow that vision dream and said, okay, yeah, let's try to get this message and some of these techniques and some of the benefits out to more and more people. Not too many people have heard of it now, but at the time it was huge. Estee Lauder and Tommy Hilfiger said, hey, let's make a perfume called Dreaming. There you have a picture of it. So they created this whole new perfume line. It actually smells pretty good. And they called me up and among a number of other media that had been interested and said, hey, would you like to be our worldwide spokesperson for our new perfume? And I said, okay, but I don't really want to sell perfume. It's not really my model. I sort of like giving away. They said, no, you don't have to sell anything at all. You just want to speak about dreams, empowerment, lucid dreaming. And then, you know, maybe we'll get some articles in the magazines or we'll get some spots on the TV. It's an interesting topic. So I guess that's more or less what happened. I said yes and ended up all around the world, just out of interest for those numerology folks, if anybody's exploring down those lines. I ended up on the first, or almost the first stop on the tour, I think a day after, in this place. Anybody recognize it? I can't see the chat, so maybe somebody call it out to me if you recognize it. So just think about this idea of dreams, empowerment through dreams, benefits, and then lucid dreaming, which I'd often speak about during these press tours and things. Going public, this is Sigmund Freud's, I guess, outer room. So they invited me, hey, you want to go see Sigmund Freud's house? There I was sitting on the couch in Sigmund Freud's place on 2007-99, which was actually on a Saturday or a Sunday. So it was on I think on the Monday or the Friday. As close as you can get on a work day to 999 numerologically, because 2007 is 2 + 0 + 0 + 7. So on 999, and 9 is kind of the dream number. So interesting timing for such things, for those who follow it. And then a bunch of press, magazines, presentations. You can see a few of the countries around there. And it was a passion profession, and lots of people seemed to be benefiting. And Tommy Hilfiger and Estee Lauder were happy because I think their perfume sold pretty well too. So they got sort of message out there, and they got a good feeling connected with it, and it actually smelled pretty nice. So here to the core of today, what you've been waiting for, and I think I heard a few new joiners arrive. So the NovaDreamer and dream technology. A little bit of a history, by no means exhaustive, possibly and very likely Many people know about many devices I won't mention today, some of which I know about too, but they're just too many to mention. But a few that are kind of connected, and the research that's connected. A very interesting name. If you haven't heard of this person, let me be very happily the first to tell you about Alan Worsley. A very interesting guy, a tall, kind of, forgive me, Alan, a little bit alien-looking guy, but super interesting, very smart. Was actually a lucid dreamer, proficient lucid dreamer, and he approached a doctor, I think many of us know, and said, hey, can we do some cool experiments? I have this idea for how we might be able to sort of start signaling from dreams in the sleep lab. And after they discussed it for a while, Alan and Keith Hearn said, let's try this. And it became the subject of Keith Hearn's, I guess, doctorate thesis, and proving lucid dreaming in the sleep lab, and then the dream machine that came from that research. So the earliest technology that I know of that's specifically about lucidity, it's not 100% true. And if somebody really grills me on it, I can probably go find it. Because I did hear about somebody who had something, it wasn't mass market by any means, but some sleep lab that had developed a device, or maybe explored something more than just going into the room to nudge someone or sort of help them go lucid, but some technology that was kind of recognizing when they were in dreaming sleep. But I don't remember specifics, and they certainly didn't publicize it, and they certainly aren't recorded in the history book. So there might be one, let's say might, before Keith Hearn's dream machine. It was an interesting, if anybody knows about it, sort of had a quick life, or maybe a short life, because it delivered electrical shocks to actually help people become lucid. And it's possible, if people want to follow the research, you can contact me after and I'll point you to a paper, but it's possible some of the data wasn't, let's say, had a question mark around it for how successful it was at inducing lucid dreams, reported differently by the researcher than maybe with a proper control study might have been. Then, of course, some people know the Dreamlight at Stanford. So it was, I guess, the Stanford research and LaBerge and team, honor the team that designed it, which is not always mentioned. But they were sort of created a pretty expensive, I think $1,500 US device, to kind of big with a box and things, but it worked and delivered, I guess, cues during REM sleep. So visual and auditory, and usually flashing together. So I guess a simple visual cue during dreams that was starting to have the effect of hopefully an incorporation. It also had, we'll get to in a second, a very important feature, less used and maybe less realized of the value of it, but a reality check button. I'll get to that in a moment. Then a very little known about device that's sort of squeezed in between the two, called the Dream Link. Because the Dreamlight was a bit clunky, rather expensive, sort of required a little bit more, I guess, servicing, it probably wasn't going to go too big mass market. Although there's still a few around. Somebody actually last month asked me to fix one. But the Dreamlink sort of had the potential, but it didn't have any sensing, and it was kind of clunky in the software, and I guess the firmware wasn't really too good. But I think maybe, I actually don't know, but probably something like 50 of them were printed or made, something like that. So one of you maybe even has one. And then, of course, I was there and I said, okay, why don't we just add some smarts? Because, you know, a Dreamlink or any device that just gives flashes at sort of, let's say, best guess times with no sensing, it's kind of like strapping a alarm clock to your head. It's not really ideal. And, you know, people are going to be spending money for this, so we want to make sure it's going to deliver, at least hopefully, a little bit more aligned with their dreams and more effective, in other words. So I got the REM sensing from the Dreamlight in there, but I guess a different version of it. We connected that to the computer, but all very low budget. You know, I won't tell you how much the actual device cost to make, but let's say far less than what it was being sold for. But don't forget, there's lots of overhead, as anybody who works at a company knows. There's all the research, time and development, the marketing, the salaries, et cetera, infrastructure to even get something possible to be public. So there's usually quite a bit of markup on most products. Then later, the Dream Speaker and the Pest. So I mentioned I'd come back to the reality test button. Before I go here, just to make sure, is the sound all good, Brian? Everything clear on the screen?
Yeah. Everything's can hear you fine, and
Okay.
yep, can see everything fine.
Okay, great. And if I was Tony Robbins, I'd tell everybody hop up for a moment and take like a calisthenics break and lock in a new state. So
That's right. And
a little bit of movement.
I see people using the emoji button, which is a new Google Meet feature. So if you want to contribute that way, there's a little smiley face at the bottom if you want to drop them a
Well,
thumbs
thanks.
up.
I will check the chat. I will check the chat after.
There we go. People get the hang of it now.
Well, just this might be a question from everybody, from me, because I haven't used Google Meet so much. Is there an easy way to save the chat, or are you going to send that around in case people want to follow that too?
Yeah, it's easy to save the chat too. And
Okay.
yeah, I encourage people to if you want to have a side conversation, feel free to use the chat. It's in the bottom right, the little talk bubble too. So that's fair game if you want to get a side chat going too.
Okay, great. So glad to hear that I seem to be coming through okay. So reality test button on the front of the mask is a little push button that actually allows a chirp, a little sound, and a little quick flash of the lights, the LEDs, to happen. And this is when the device is turned on with batteries in. It should work. 99.99% of masks work normally, except for the few duds that really make you do reality checks. Because, and what's the point of the button? Well, just make sure the mask's on, because it would stay asleep with the batteries plugged in, and it was always on the NovaDreamer. I don't know if people are aware of that, but the sleep mode was so quiet. It was running at 32 kilohertz. It didn't need a high-powered oscillator, so that it could last a few months on a couple AA batteries. So the reality test button would let you know it's on, but mainly it was to stay, am I awake? To sort of check, am I awake or dreaming? How would that work? Well, in dreams, it seems pretty hard to change light levels and often very difficult to have devices work correctly, especially multiple times. You know, that's sort of the look at your hands or switch the real light turned into an electronic version. So people would be, let's say, for example, lying there, NovaDreamer wearing on, maybe fallen asleep or maybe falling asleep. Hard to say. We always say check first, then decide, because lots of people have dreams of falling asleep, wearing the mask, and then they wake up saying, oh, I wasn't falling asleep, I was sleeping. And the mask that I thought I had on was actually a false mask from my dream. So it gets into strange incorporations and I guess maybe astral or I guess simile to waking life type of stuff, that it's always good to check first and decide. So the model is you press the button, and if it flashes and chirps, yes, you're probably dreaming, if you see a little light. So that was the key function of the button. That's one way that people could go lucid. I'd say somewhere around a third, maybe more, like half of people's lucid dreams came just from that button, which is surprising. It's got incredible value. Just a, let's say, pretty strong and immediately accessible reality check. Incorporate, obviously, you can also just look at your hands. It's a little less expensive, but sometimes, unless you look 5-10 seconds, it may not get wavy, odd, or go through each other or whatever reality check. And there's many others, I know. But this was an interesting electronic one. It can also trigger lucidity. This is kind of the obvious feature, I guess, but I'll just mention it. By incorporation recognition. Incorporation means the lights, the LEDs, the flashing, or the sounds also, can show up in a dream, sometimes just as flashing, you know, the whole screen of the dream flashes, or there's a buzzing sound that's just bzz, 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 or whatever sound is chosen. Which, by the way, can be interesting. One of the sounds we chose for the dream speaker was having your own voice say, I'm dreaming. So it's got the I in there, or sometimes use your own name, which can kind of awaken consciousness. Craig, you're dreaming. So that could be an interesting side discussion. What's the best audio bite to play as a lucid cue? But anyways, that possibility was there. But I just want to really mention this for all similar devices that use, let's say, external stimuli, that it's very important to actually train for the stimuli beforehand, to recognize, sort of set a memory bomb. I called it memory bombs before I'd ever heard about the mild technique or any of these techniques. Sort of set an intention, you might say, to remember something clearly in the future. And like, for example, if I see flashing lights, or even if I just see something strange, because sometimes the third way that it can help you go lucid happens, then I'll do my reality check and ask, hey, am I dreaming right now? And some way to sort of check our state. So if we recognize and sort of set our intention, sometimes we can punch through the forgetfulness barrier of waking dreaming and have it incorporated in the dream and notice it and then go lucid. So that happened and worked well for a lot of people, including me. And then the third way that it can bring lucidity isn't quite obvious, but I just used a word here, a quickening of consciousness, maybe a slightly altered state. So no flashing, not necessarily any sound, but just kind of like a heightened sense of something weird or more presence or this type of thing, more than baseline. Okay, and not just because I'm wearing a dream mask. So that happened also. People would just be a little bit more lucid. Maybe they're sleeping lighter and that helped. Maybe it was having a strange mask on, but certainly more than just having a dead mask on. It wasn't flashing. So that was kind of shown. So there's different ways. Maybe there's other ways, but those were 3 ways that it could start to trigger lucid dreams. I talked about it in the past, and I know some people still use it. I still have it and occasionally use it. But it sort of got discontinued, more or less, let's say. And then lots of reincarnations of it appeared. One little feature that if you have one, it's not known about, but I'm telling you now because I designed it and programmed it, is that it actually delivers an external cue. There's a little, what do you call that, audio jack on there? A little micro audio, 3.5 inch, I think, 0.35 inch, whatever it is. Sort of regular headphone audio anyway. That's on there, and you can actually cue something if you look for a square wave. And I made a little sort of, what do you call that? The programmer's a word. A little, not a snowball, an Easter egg, is that what programmers call it? A little surprise in there anyways, that if 2 masks are connected by an audio cable that's properly wired, you have to switch the I guess, output audio and input audio. So you have to switch the left with the right. Then actually one person having a lucid dream and getting signaled, or at least getting signaled anyways, will trigger another person wearing a mask if they're connected. In other words, one person going into dream state can trigger somebody sleeping nearby, or if you have wireless, can trigger somebody else anywhere in the world, I suppose. So you could have some kind of mutual dreaming. I don't think that feature ever got used much, but I thought it was an interesting idea as a potential future technology. Hey, when one dreamer goes into a state, let's see if we can trigger other lucidity at the same time and maybe have meetups, or who knows. So that's actually in that mask already designed. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, and I could easily be wrong, but it's the first mass market sleep monitoring device too, outside of sleep labs in a big way. So that's kind of fun, because it could also connect to your computer and you could see the data from your nights. And it's also one of the earliest devices with what's called, if you don't know electronics, a microcontroller, a little chip that's sort of a computer on a chip for a few dollars, or sometimes now like 25 cents. And it was the earliest one by Microchip. They put out the, I should remember the name, PIC 1654. Pretty sure that's the number. And then later models of NovaDreamer had the 156, etc. But the earliest microcontroller they put out, which didn't have any, for you electronics folk, didn't have any A to D input. In other words, there was no easy way to get an analog signal in there. Yes, if you had a digital kind of phase signal or frequency or something, you could do it. But we figured out a nifty way to use a digital pin for an analog signal and get a pretty good sort of a measure of eye movement signals from that. During the course of it, I think the second version, I forget the version numbers, but depending a little bit which mask version you had, the orientation was changed. So it actually started sensing up and down, which actually was slightly different than the patent that was written for eye movement sensing. The PCB got quite a bit thinner. Some interesting stories around that, but bottom line is we had to put the traces on both sides of the PCB in order not to, over time, to have dryness crack the traces. Anybody else who's had this problem knows that it's terrible to send out a product and then find out over time, like weeks to months later, that they start cracking and like, oh no. So I doubled the PCB traces. But now, of course, there's flexible circuits that are easily not so expensive. At the time, they were quite expensive. So it also had alternating IQs, which I think could be pretty interesting, a little different than just flashing at different frequencies. Of course, it had that alternating sound and light, bzz, flash, bzz, flash. So starting to mix it up. And then if you use the external cueing, you could I actually tried putting a thermistor, or not a thermistor, I guess, well, a fancy way of saying it, a resistor as a heater from the output cue, the cueing. And I think I burnt my finger that night because I didn't get the resistor right. But it was trying to give temperature feedback. So it could actually cue in different ways if somebody wanted to hook it up that way. So some kind of fun stories around the development there. It was sort of around the time, a little bit early for surface mount devices. By the time that we were working on, I guess, the more widespread model, I probably could have switched to surface mount, sort of very small and lighter chips, but they were actually somewhat more expensive at the time. Now they're cheaper than regular resistors and like pin-legged chips, but at the time they weren't. And it wasn't easy. Now it's kind of easy as a hobbyist or a DIY person to do your own surface mount soldering. If anybody wants tips on that, I'm pretty good at it. But at the time, you had to send it to the whole lab, so going through prototypes with those was hard, so we just stuck with through-hole components. Just to honor the people, because one of them came on a presentation I gave about a year ago. I was like, oh boy. The inventor, or maybe somebody who helped with the Twilight Navigator. There were other devices that were kind of, I guess, a little bit after or around the same time as the development as NovaDreamer. Who were, let's say, loosely collaborating with Stanford, that didn't get mentioned and never came to the light of day, never really got out there much. And forgive me when I write on the screen there, REM sensing banana slug, because I actually don't remember what the name of that thing was. And it's not a put down really, it just looked exactly like a banana slug, if you know what that is, like a big, long, yellow, flexible, rubbery blob that you stuck on the side of your eye, which had little LED sensing. So there's a few other devices that sort of had the similar technology. Unfortunately, they also infringed upon the patent. So I guess they got letters to not continue their work. Now for me, then there was the REM Dreamer, which I think has made it a little more popular because it had a longer life, still going, which was, just to say it here publicly for the first time, was an exact copy. I mean, exact PCB layout and everything. Not the firmware, but the exact PCB layout was an exact copy of the NovaDreamer. So copyright infringements, patent infringements, lots of infringements there. But maybe it helped people. Who knows? I don't know how good the sensing was. I never actually tried it. Later, they started adding other features. And I guess if they made it a little bit their own and improved it, good for them, they were from Europe, I believe. Then the REM-E, I don't know how you say it, came out, REM-E, which was unfortunately with no sensing. They did have an amazing Kickstarter campaign, and I knew from, I guess, occasional eBay sales, I just watched NovaDreamer selling at like $500-600, like what? That there was a very primed market for this kind of thing. And they just landed right at the right moment with the help of the Reddit group, which some of you might know of, and got a lot of Kickstarter funding and then pumped out a lot of masks, which just did sort of timed queuing. But to honor the REM-E group, I did warn them that they were infringing on patents, that I wasn't going to follow up, but that they might get letters about. So they didn't seem to change about it. But anyways, there they were giving feedback, and I guess it's not the end of the world. And they probably helped some people go lucid. But I just make clear that there's no sensing on there. So the cues could come during deep sleep. A little anecdote that I want to say is one dreamer that while I was doing tech support and I guess customer service for Lucidity Institute, which I would do, one of my hats there, public relations director, tech support, engineer, you name it. One of the people had thrown their NovaDreamer across the room, or they woke up anyways with it on the other side of the room, and we assumed they threw it across. And we started getting anecdotal reports that, wow, sometimes it can like sort of trigger or maybe at least disturb deeper sleep, maybe perhaps even deliver night terrors or things that aren't as desirable. So they sort of, unfortunately, if you don't have any sensing, you could easily be delivering messages or cues at the wrong time, which is not ideal. Then I put a line through it here. Can you guys see that word Lucid Dreamer, or is my stop sharing thing over top of it?
We can see it.
Okay, good. Because I have this little button. I don't know if I can move that little box. Let's see. Oh yeah, I can move that. So that's good. So the Lucid Dreamer, and there's tons of others, including Aura and some other stuff. It's not exactly lucid dreaming, but some incredible technologies, biofeedback that I didn't mention, but I just want to honor there's many others who are doing sort of copies or adding to, expanding upon NovaDreamer. One that I want to mention as a little bit of a a friendly warning to anybody who's pursuing technologies like this is the Lucid Dreamer. I don't know if anybody followed. I think it was Kickstarter. Might have been Indiegogo, so don't quote me. But one of the crowdfunding sites that they were going to get big money for this amazing invention. They used, I guess, the insights from the Voss study that was saying, oh yeah, there's some gamma frequency showing up during the lucid dreams, especially around the temporal lobes, the temples here. And so, right away, before the research was even like doubled or anything, they just made a device to actually stimulate. Later, I guess, now Benjamin Baird, and maybe others have suggested it looks like that might have just been artifact from saccadic eye movements, or it might have actually been a little bit misinterpreted data, but it wasn't super easily reproducible. And that whole Kickstarter campaign, after receiving lots of donations, had to cancel and refund all their money because they said, oh, in the first couple of test subjects, it seemed to be helping, but then it wasn't showing any difference between not wearing the mask. So probably they just had the quickening effect of wearing a strange mask and not necessarily inducing. Although I think there is something in the gamma bands, but that's actually been known about well before Voss in shamanic circles and things.
Yeah.
But
it's like we got a question here from Dr. LeBerge. Feel free to fire away.
Stephen, is he on the mic? Should I switch screens?
I see that he raised his hand. He might be getting off of mute here, so we can give him a minute.
Okay, well, just interrupt me if he figures that out, or if he types it in the chat, then just maybe relay it. Hey, Stephen, I hope I'm relaying all your amazing research correctly and respectfully. And maybe he remembers the name of the banana slug. Anyways, those technologies unfortunately didn't make it, but just to honor inventors who probably devoted a lot of time to certain things. Okay, well, unless I hear from, I guess, you, Brian, or Stephen, I'll keep going here. Is that good?
Yep, sounds good. I'm not able to manually unmute people. So.
Okay, and we will have time for questions and discussion, I hope, depending on how long people want to stay.
Yeah.
I'm kind of about, I don't know, halfway through. Hopefully that's maybe 2/3, but more like half. Just to give people a little bit of an idea. I'll try to get back to my page here. Okay, so this is very rough. It's by no means scientific. It's more of just like let's say an idea, so that people have a little idea. If you haven't studied or looked at sleep too much, this is a very rough average night for average dreamer of sleep states or stages, I guess. Let's say levels of sleep. And on the bottom, you have time. So each little tick there is roughly 90 minutes. And then on the left, you have the states or stages of sleep. Actually, now, officially, I think stage 3 and 4 are grouped together, deep sleep, etc. But let's just say we're going from light sleep or wakefulness into deeper stages a lot and pretty quickly for most people at the start of the night. Come back out into stage 1, then maybe some REM sleep, usually pretty short, and etc. So you have about, depending how long you sleep, 4 or 5, maybe 6 cycles a night. Or if you just do a quick, overnighter for studying for exam, you might just have 1 cycle without any REM or anything. So it varies a lot by medication, by dreamer, by workouts, by obviously foods. Drugs can affect it quite a bit, but just to know, average sleeper, average night, you usually get more REM sleep towards the morning, and sometimes little micro awakenings more and more here. You can kind of see that you dip into wakefulness. And then you also get more REM time per stage 1 period. In other words, when's the best time to, or let's say the most successful time usually to stimulate lucidity? probably during these last couple REM cycles or sleep cycles. Because obviously your waking and dreaming minds are closer together and you're not in deep sleep. So that goes into the whole discussion of like level 2, lucid dreams and other states like that, which could be interesting, but just for triggering the more visual lucid dreams, probably those last cycles are more likely and better. So that's kind of the rough, very general picture of a sleep cycle. Here's an actual record from a NovaDreamer. This is Dream Mask Alice. Did I hear Stephen?
You did?
Stephen.
Yes. Well, I finally figured out at least something I can do on this game.
How are you?
Yeah, I am me. Thank you. So it's interesting conversation, and this was a long while ago. And part of what's curious to me is how we remember it was such a rosy lens. It's things are modified and somehow, and things were simpler and just worked this way or that way, and because I remember where you were the most important in that whole procedure was when we were building a REMI essentially before REMIs were saying, okay, we're just going to make this thing that's going to just give you a little cue, a reality check, basically, when you wake up. That's all it's going to do. It'll time and wake you up or stimulate you later on. Well, nobody wanted to buy that. They all wanted to see, we'd already had the Dreamlight, and that's what they really wanted. So I guess it was Daniel Kotke, and the Apple engineer number 2, gave us an idea with that very PIC chip that we're using. Well, you could get an A to D off of that chip. Really? And you really loved that idea. Say, absolutely. Because it's very simple. It's you just put a capacitor there and see how long it takes to charge. And that's a measure of the voltage. And so it had the simplest A to D you could imagine. But that's the first one. So that's the first one. But then we went to another.
Do you mind if I share my recollection of that?
Yeah.
It sounds like we're sort of naming a few moments here. It was actually Bruce, I think, who mentioned the idea. Do you remember Bruce?
Yeah.
A great guy. Who was one of the team there. Although Daniel's amazing and still a close friend who actually, to honor him, designed, or at least I guess worked on the DreamLink, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, the DreamLink though was a device that was we had two things called that. One was like the REMI, and the other was designed for dream recall only. It was optimized for that. It was basically a supernova with a dream light. Now, the main step forward on the device was having an interface with it so that you could get the data out of it and you could set it up remotely and so on. And that was a nice improvement. And I think that's about the place where we rewrote the program. Let's see, we had a different engineer doing the low-level programming, right? So, but that didn't let us do things like use all of the memory of that chip. So the Dreamlight, I don't know if people know what a Dreamlight really was, but it had some 32,000 bits, 32,000 K of memory. And that is a lot of memory for what you want for this. Let's just say, what was the eye movement activity throughout the entire night, right? So it's a lot of data that you can use. However, this little mask has in it how much memory? Well, it's got 8 bits.
8 bits
Bit,
per byte. I
not
think it
byte,
was like
not bytes,
32,
not
32 bytes or something.
no. It was bits because there's only one thing you could spare. Say so. What we could keep is we could say every 5 minutes did it give a cue or not, and that was the data that we could keep overnight and looking in the morning. That was it. There's almost nothing, but it still worked very well.
This was the
How well
Dreamlink,
did it
you
work?
mean?
No. The Dreamlight had the 60,
Oh, the
the
Dreamlink.
32.
I said the Dreamlink.
Yes, and well, we have the super. Where did that come from? The supernova, I guess is what we called it. Yes, that was the one with the interface that you could connect with. Really, a too big. When this little mini phone of a port there, and you could get it to do things, both an optional signal out to program, but you could also keep your records, and that was pretty good. But I say the actual Dreamlight was by far the best in terms of ease of use and what to do with it and sophistication. We just didn't have the capacity to put that many features into one of those PIC 16 chips, So, but in terms of the conversation of well, what do you want to do with these things now? Well, of course, now you can get a Dreamlight right in that little mouse, just right there, no problem. So, and this, by the way, is I think a perfectly wonderful version of it's the next NovaDreamer. Because if you look at this and say, well, what's wrong with this guy? How could you make that more comfortable? Well, if you wear one.
This what? Are you showing video? Because I don't see any video.
I thought it was. Okay, so there's the video thing there, and I still got a line through it.
Yeah, so maybe double click on that.
Double click is red.
While you're checking there, just a quick question out of interest for me and maybe everybody here. Keith Hearn told me that he shared with you and William Dement, I guess before you'd published or anything, or maybe started researching that, hey, he'd found this new way to signal from dreams with using eye movements, but you never responded. The team, I guess at Stanford, among a few others, who had responded, never responded. Do you remember that?
Yeah. No, I can't remember that because it didn't happen.
Well,
what
he definitely
did
sent
happen,
a letter.
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. Yeah, I can believe he sent a letter. He says he sent a letter to Dement and Rechtschaffen, and Rechtschaffen replied to him. So I figured he probably sent a letter to Bill as well. But I asked Bill back, when I was doing my dissertation, whether he knew anyone doing anything like this at all. And he just did not know. That means he didn't read it. He was a very, very, busy, powerful man. He just got stuff piled on his desk and just didn't read it. So it's too bad that I didn't know about it before. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that so he's got the approach that yeah, well, I probably just stole his work, and but that's partly the way he is,
Yeah, he has an interesting character too.
Yeah. So how do I get the picture on here? So it is that there's a camera image there that next to the microphone, which I guess I turned on, right? That works. Is there only one camera image?
Well, can I just ask you a global question?
It's on.
Stephen, just a global
Yes,
question.
you can, but is there anyone technical here?
Well, I could probably help you, or maybe Brian can, but just global question. Would you like a whole Tech for Dreaming event to maybe present some of your work? Because it sounds like you're kind of interested in sharing. Because
Well,
I
I've
think
always
Brian
been
would
interested. I've always been interested in sharing, and I find it incredibly frustrating that people don't listen. So look, that's it.
I think Brian would
the
be
problem.
very open to having you present. He'd probably love it. Is that true, Brian?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but the invite is always there. Is always there for sure. And welcome.
Yeah.
The contributions here tonight too. It's very fun to hear you and Craig recall some of the stories here. Like, this is awesome. So I want to make that clear.
Yeah, I think that there is some value in the conversations and what you're trying to do, but I'm a little skeptical because I've seen it happen so many times where people, they sort of make a little club that's going to do something, but that's all it really is. It's a club, and they don't generally make that rocket fly to the moon.
I don't really follow up. I can see if you'd like to present, I could see that I could sort of help it along best I can. Because Brian actually originally asked me, "Do you think Stephen would be open to presenting?" And I said, "I'm not sure. You'd have to check, but I'm not. I wasn't too positive. But if you say yes, I think
sure. Like, for example, here's I've heard people are interested in making a device something like this. Well, I can tell you, I've spent 25 years on these devices, and I can tell you this is a great design. It took a long time to find out how do you get see this thing here, that's the original.
Well, we can't
it's
see
sort of flexible. Oops, right. Well,
Steven, let me
technical person right now, you just have to tell me how to get this on.
Yeah, in the bottom navigation menu next to the microphone icon, you should see this video camera icon. Click on that.
On the left.
And the bottom center.
Bottom. See, what I see is two things in red and a bunch in black and white.
Try the red one, not the hang up button, not the phone.
Right. Well, that's what I have been trying, because that looks like a camera that's with a slash through it, but.
That's probably
so I do that.
Yeah.
I think click that one.
Turn on camera, Command E.
Well, maybe
that's what it's telling me now that I'm doing that. All right,
maybe,
that's the answer.
Stephen, since I've spent quite a while preparing, maybe you can work out some of these technical things and have a whole, I guess, presentation for your own ideas in your own night, because I'm sure people would love it more than squeezing in between sound bites here.
Yeah.
Just to honor your work, like it should really be honored, probably a lot more than like a few minutes here.
Well, I presume this must be a simple problem there. So, because why shouldn't this work? You hear me because I push that button there. So, what is this program anyway?
It should be it should be the red button with the line through it.
The camera.
All right.
It should work.
Okay, and it says turn on camera with a Command E. Maybe both at once.
Stephen, you just try clicking it once, because you might be double clicking it, in which case you're kind of turning it on and then immediately.
All right. Sure.
And make sure the device has a camera, because
I don't have to.
Of course it does. Yeah.
Or try calling in with a different laptop or something, maybe.
Yeah, his camera was on earlier when he started the call, and then he turned it off. So, yeah, you just have to click the camera once.
I don't know how he turned it off. Yeah. All right. So maybe I could quit it and come back, and there I am. Is that... well, let's see.
That might work, yeah. I mean, just log in again, and it might just be on.
Right. Okay.
I don't know.
So... but the other thing, of course, is I had a moment longer, I'd look at the menus. That usually explains what's not right. Okay, I see the number of microphones off, so you guys know how to do this. Well, wait a minute, let's see this. Craig, turn off your picture.
I'll try. I'm just clicking on the video icon off.
Yes.
And then I press it when it's red again on, and I think it takes a
Okay,
second
is
or
it
two, then it comes
right?
back.
And that's the one that we've been talking about. Okay, so
Yeah.
there's something not permitting me to do this thing here. Let's
I
see.
better do a reality check because I think this is kind of a dreamy moment here, Stephen.
Yeah, well,
Maybe
that's right.
I remember. I'm handing you something now. Remember the game?
I have a question.
course
I have
I
a question
do.
about when it's saying the Command E, that's a shortcut option. So it sounds like you're on a MacBook. Have you tried just doing that? Those are hotkeys, so you would hold down the Command key and press E. Have you tried doing that just by itself?
I haven't exactly done that, but let's try it.
Is it a Mac or a PC, Stephen? Because it would be Control E if it's a PC.
But it isn't.
No, it's a Mac. So Command E.
The
Yeah.
MacBook Pro. I've been holding it down for a while now. So let me try holding down the other one.
Is if you have Zoom open or if you have another window open with the same.
I don't think so. Let me make sure that I don't, though. I mean,
it might be trying to hold the camera open.
yeah.
The last thing you want to check is there's a button with 3 dots on it, and then you can go to settings and video, and then make sure that the camera that's selected is the correct camera, because sometimes
Right. Yeah, I got it, because that could be it, because I did try to use another camera which may not actually work with this.
Right.
So that could explain it right there. Okay, so let's see. There's the 3 dots.
3 dots, settings,
Yeah.
video.
So what's supposed to happen then?
Once you get to the video tab,
This is over on K there, right? Why? It's when I move it off. If it's this thing, it's got one set of blue with 3 whites in it, and it's got a it says U, and then it has a.
No, I think that's the blue one is probably just the audio signal. On the bottom menu, there's 3 dots. Try that.
Bottom.
Kind of right beside the hang up.
Yeah, I see. That's called more options.
Yeah.
And we could
Okay.
yeah, we could
These are lots of options. Yes.
Yeah,
Apply visual effects.
we could troubleshoot that for a bit, and then like as Craig goes through
I wouldn't go on that far. Just a moment. I'm hoping we'll do it. So let's just see if I can apply visual effects. That would be something, right? Well, wait a minute. What is cast this meeting?
No, that won't be it. That'll be to your
Okay.
TV probably.
I think
Okay.
your best bet, Stephen's probably leaving and then coming back again, because we did see your video previously. I think it was when you joined companion mode. So that's probably the
Okay. All right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I'll try that. So that means I saw the hang up there. This is the phone hang up, and then I'm going to come back. How?
Just join again from whatever the link you joined from, and then also keep in mind the suggestion I said. Maybe you could have your whole own event to share about some of these things, so that some of the time I spend preparing can be honored here.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So
do
in
come
that
back.
case-
I think people are really interested to hear all your input and point of view. I'm sure of that.
Oh, for sure. It's kind of magic to have him kind of join too. And I know you've spent time preparing too, so feel free to continue here. And hopefully we can get through your content here, Craig. So thanks again for putting it together.
Okay. Well, we might hear Stephen come back there.
Yeah.
Just to honor one of my mentors. And I guess maybe this will be on the recording. He won't hear it live, but I guess I got quite interested in lucid dreaming in Stanford when I read Stephen's first book, Lucid Dreaming. Really nice visionary work. There I see he's joined again. And just for the record, the NovaDreamer does have more than 8 bits of memory. Anybody can check it online on DigiKey or any site. So I think 32 bytes, something like that. But a small amount that was challenging for any electrician or electronics expert. Well, we'll see if he figures that out. Do we see video? Because I don't see everybody. No, I don't see Stephen. I don't know how to get the whole screen.
I think you can just continue the presentation for now, Craig.
Okay. And then I'm sure you guys I can connect you with an email if you want to maybe try to reach out to him. And it sounds like you'd be pretty open to presenting after. So are you guys seeing the, let's say the my screen, or are you seeing a picture of a NovaDreamer kind of graph with lines on it?
The graph with the title NovaDreamer Dream Report.
Okay, because I had switched to the Zoom meeting just to see if Stephen was on there. Okay, so picking back up to kind of honor Stephen's work, there's the actual output from the dream interface from the NovaDreamer on a sleep night, one of the early prototypes. But you can see while we were still working on, I guess, the algorithm, the eye movement sensing was getting pretty good. I'll just go over a few with the mouse loosely. And don't forget, we don't have EEGs on this. It's just eye movements from infrared. But you can start to see the activity there in like maybe a REM period around 60 minutes, at least another clear REM period somewhere around 150, and then a pretty major, I guess, dream somewhere 250, 300. And then probably a little bit just before waking. And don't forget that some dreams might have not too strong in visual components, so that the eye movements might be pretty minimal. So it's not perfect by any means, but it started to give a way to actually send cues during what was hoped to be visual dreams. And it was certainly better than just sort of flashing like the Dreamlink did, or I guess like REMI does. Just to kind of acknowledge, this is pretty important for how the technology can and should work, and also how non-technological lucid dreaming methods can work too. What is this? It shows when taking a nap, or what's now more commonly called wake back to bed technique, WBTB, I think it might be written. You can have a lucid dream up to 5 times more likely if you have a nap about 2 hours, somewhere around 2 hours after, I guess, doing the first portion of your sleep. You can sort of see 3 graphs of it there. The first one shows like the incredible jump to 50% of lucid dreams compared to just a regular night without an interruption. On the right here, you can see sort of the length of the night interrupted or not. The white space is sort of wakefulness, and you can see much higher lucid dreams if you kind of interrupted the sleep. If you went right back to bed right away after a quick interruption, you still had a little bit more higher than just staying asleep. Sort of seeing that it was a shorter sleep, but you still had a higher percentage of lucid dreams. And then if you sort of just did the whole sleep and didn't interrupt it, you still have a chance. These were, don't forget, pretty proficient lucid dreamers who were the research subjects. But bottom line is, you're much more likely in a sort of wake back to bed technique, or let's just say simply interrupting sleep and then going back for the longer REM periods that are left over. So that's pretty key for technology and just for sort of self-empowered personal lucid dreaming techniques. Just really remember that, a big jump. There's lots of other techniques out there, but that's one that the research kind of showed fairly good. And it's been repeated research has shown, I guess, some related numbers, not exactly always the same, but certainly an increase for wake back to bed. The time delay and the amount of sleep and everything could be a whole avenue of exploration. Hopefully Stephen's back on and able to hear me. Just offering a few anecdotes from the day. I think I told Stephen this. If not, I'm jarring your memory a little bit. But I came down with my girlfriend, fiance at the time, for, I guess, the interview, or when I was first meeting Stephen. He gave me a Dreamlight the first night to try out at home, which I thought was really cool. I was sort of into technology. And what's interesting is I didn't have a lucid dream, but my partner that night, sleeping in the same bed, had a lucid dream sleeping beside some strange guy wearing a mask, and it was just too unusual. So she went fully lucid and had a great lucid dream, which I always thought was kind of funny. You know, the guy with the mask didn't have one, and the person beside them did. So as an incorporation, it probably still worked because she had the Dreamlight in her dream as a visual. Not flashing lights, but just seeing me with it on when she fell asleep. Oh, Stephen's on, who might remember this one too. So I was getting pretty interested in different technology, and at the time it was VR. Virtual reality was just starting to get big, and the first ever VR expo was like appeared in San Jose. So I thought, oh, I'll go check that out. And I went on the Friday night, I think, or maybe the Thursday night, whatever the first night was. And just, I guess, being a little bit of an entrepreneur and an enthusiast, I went to the organizers and said, hey, you guys have any more booth space? by the way, we have like what's probably the ultimate virtual reality. In fact, you don't even know it's not virtual. You don't even know that it's virtual. It's called lucid dreaming. And we have this technology and it might be a fit. And do you have any booth space? And after a little bit of discussion, maybe haggling, they said, yeah, we can give you a pretty small just booth. I guess we'll squeeze you in. We'll give you $50. I said, okay, we'll take it. And it turns out because there was no room left in the regular booth space, it was right on the corner. Why is this more than just a fun anecdote? Because it ended up filling one of the workshops, I guess, right after that, 2 to 3 times with as many people, which I think made a very interesting early connection between, let's say, technology, virtual reality, maybe now augmented reality, and lucid dreaming. So a lot of technical-minded people got interested in this, which isn't true for all other spiritual explorations necessarily. But I like that lucid dreaming kind of speaks the language of our culture, which is one of the languages anyways, technology. Working out lucidity, we got a call from the producers of Lawnmower Man or Lawnmower Man 2 and other interesting things from the VR connection, I think. Did I hear Stephen on again?
Yeah, I think.
Do you remember the VR Expo?
Sure.
That was fun.
Yeah. Yes. A
Did you get your video working?
Not really.
Oh, shoot.
I mean, well, you would see me if I did, right?
Yeah. Well,
unless I look exactly like someone else. Yes. I'm sure there is a perfectly refined explanation for it. I'm going to report abuse.
Report abuse. Abuse by the software for not showing your face.
Yeah, well, or I'm going to give it another chance. I'm going to open picture-in-picture now. How about simply use a phone for audio? Well, I am. You can hear me, right? So then we just don't have apply visual effects. I'm going to apply some visual effects.
I think that's just stuff like add fancy, like mustache, and you probably.
Yeah, well, let's see if you can see that, even if you don't see me.
Anyways, so I'll continue here, so that we're not respecting people's time tonight, and I guess respectfully, feel free to add in if it feels right. So reality testing isn't necessarily an obvious concept or feature. Why do I say that? Because, for example, the reality check button on the front of Dreamlight, NovaDreamer, Dreamlink, maybe some other masks. I guess the REM Dreamer had one. I don't know about the others. I haven't really checked. I'm sure, hopefully they did, because it was one of the successful features. It's not obvious. Like, people don't really understand like that subtle thing of, wait a minute, this might not be waking state. The whole first shock that you get once you go lucid. Oh my gosh, this isn't Kansas anymore, like Dorothy. So we had calls, sort of tech support. I don't think my mask's working. And I said, okay, I'd had a few of these calls before. I said, is it plugged in? I mean, are the batteries plugged in? And yeah, I had both batteries in. Okay, and one person actually came by Lucidity Institute with their mask and said, this isn't working. So I sort of checked it a little bit, and respectfully, didn't want to be rude or anything. I said, do you remember when it wasn't working? Because it seems to be working now. I said, oh yes, well, I was walking around yesterday with it on and it wouldn't do the reality check function. And I was just trying not to have a giggle or chuckle a little bit. But you were walking around with the mask on yesterday? And he sort of paused a little bit, and then, very respectfully, I said, possibly you were actually dreaming of walking around. So that, it looked like a mask and it didn't work. That probably means you're in a dream. And he's like, no, I was definitely walking around with it. I said, okay, well, how about you leave me a message next time that your button doesn't work, like an actual phone message? And I didn't ever get the message at Lucidity, so maybe he got the message that, yeah, you can have dreams that seem pretty close to waking or exact replicas, even though the mask didn't work. So the reality checking can be extremely valuable, sort of an incorporation or a lack of. I think I mentioned that one dreamer woke up with the mask on the other side of the room. So just be careful with anybody working on REM sensing and try to align pretty well with the REM, or at least explore and research it more before giving cues or triggers or stimulus in other states, because it might induce stuff that you're not aiming for. A few related technologies of interest. I just picked three, I think, at random here out of like probably thousands now. But one of the very early technologies that actually got me inspired was the mood ring. Anybody else remember the mood ring? 1975, I think summer of 75 was introduced. It was a very simple, I guess, like super rudimentary version of maybe an Aura or other device that now can sort of do HRV and way more fancy stuff. But it had a simple temperature color pad, and it would change color when your body temperature, I guess peripheral temperature, would go up or down, which was kind of fun. You could sort of tell a little bit your mood, but obviously wasn't perfect if you went out into the cold Canada winter, or if you got sort of hot air blowing on you. But the general idea of a little bit of biofeedback was really starting in the mass consciousness there, and I like that. The God helmet, a lesser known, but do check it out. You can do a Google search for that. Persinger, a doctor, I guess, at least let's just say a researcher from Canada, who designed a helmet, pretty much a football helmet or something close to it, motorcycle helmet maybe, that had pretty strong, I believe, or at least let's just say not lengthily tested magnetic stimulation, so sort of a TEMS device, if you know TEMS or TMS, transcranial electromagnetic stimulation, that would kind of induce altered states, not necessarily just for dreams or dreaming. I think part of it was to have a spiritual experience. But without the level of testing and maybe longer term checking of side effects, it's pretty good to test anything that gets a little bit stronger like this before putting it out to the public. I don't think he ever made a public device, but he certainly got lots of press for it. So just keep in mind, don't make, if you're creating something or sort of contributing to something, make sure that's well tested and you're not putting like a microwave oven out that people wear or something like that. And then this is one I really want to honor Roger, a connection, a colleague, and a bit of a friend here that I reached out to about the Global Consciousness Project. It's very, very cool technology. And actually, since very early days, I think at, what's the name of that university? Princeton? Yeah, Princeton. And other research they did in sort of random numbers and sort of random, I guess, electronical things being randomly set into left-right bins and versus intuitively chosen, and sort of having like what ended up being less than random effects showing up, and sometimes pretty strong. I'll show you a graph here. So kind of long story short, the Princeton research led to devices that they sent all around the world and still are operating as we speak, that sort of fire off random numbers quite often, like probably millions of times a second, or at least 1 million times a second, and then average the randomness. Here's a graph of what happened on September 11th. So if it was just pure average numbers, kind of like simplifying it a little bit here, but the red line here should sort of stay around the 0. And that's, let's just say sort of loosely, the probability of being not exactly even randomness. And yes, it can go up and down a little bit. Obviously, there's things for a little while that go randomness. These are in days on the time axis. But after a huge worldwide event that, I guess in this case, shook or at least affected the global consciousness, September 11th, and many other events other than that, but this is one example, you can see how it went way off the likelihood of something happening. In other words, random numbers, or let's say non-random numbers, that were supposed to be random were firing off incredibly low probability. I think the envelope here of this blue line is 1 in 20 chance, p of 0.05. So well above 1 in 20 chance of happening. And for extended days, 3, 4, or 5 days, extremely unlikely. I forget the actual numbers, and I'm sure they're changed since now, but I think Roger mentioned to me that over many experiments, like 300 or something like that, forgive me for the exact number, but it came down to one on the order of 1 in 1 million chance that it could have just happened randomly, that the random number generators wouldn't be firing at random. So some pretty cool effect that I'm not sure anybody exactly knows what it's relating to, but probably something relating to mass consciousness. There seemed to be, from other researchers I spoke to connected with it, local effects too. You can actually affect workshops, or workshops doing certain meditation practices could actually affect the device going way less than random, and things like that. So check that out if you haven't seen. And I'm kind of talking about maybe future technologies now. Ideally, we can include something that starts including like multiple people, not just one dreamer. let's say more generally for lucidity or awareness of some kind of info that we're not easily aware of physically, like GCP or like the mood or like any of the other biofeedback devices. Here's a little model of, this is a visual model of lucidity as not an on or off thing. Let's say roughly in my analogy here, lucidity is a hand. There are certainly different parts of the brain that are maybe a little more or less active. It's not on or off in terms of a spectrum. It's more like, let's say the light spectrum. There's different colors, different levels, different flavors, if you want to use strange words. So one size lucidity definitely doesn't fit all. And some people don't even use the word lucid dreams. There's all kinds of words out there, non-local consciousness, out-of-body experience, remote viewing, and astral, and many others. So when people come up to me and say, was that a lucid dream? I usually don't answer right away. I just said, sounds like you added some awareness, or maybe you guided the content with your suggestion before sleep. So that's a little bit lucid. You started to guide the dream a little bit. And if you sort of have present moment during the dream and you can say, wow, now I'm dreaming, and I could do an experiment, probably have a couple faculties like will and decision-making, maybe memory if you remember your experiment. But it's not always on or off. So kind of think of it in a little more expansive model than just 1 or 0 binary kind of. So different brain places, but also different levels, different people, and perhaps connecting with something more than individual awareness, lucidity of 2 dreamers getting triggered simultaneously or other things. Another potential future, I think, that could really be researched more. Now it's got research, but there's no devices really that I know of that are helping, except the standard lucid dreaming devices. But a little more targeted towards helping people resolve nightmares, maybe going lucid in the nightmare, which has kind of been shown to help quite a bit by different researchers. But actually maybe like changing the course of the nightmare, stimulating the dreamer to dream a different way, knowing what their nightmare is. There's beginnings of that with some of the virtual reality and the augmented reality. You actually go through a video dream and you change it in real time. Jane Gockenbach in Canada is doing pretty cool research on that. Other researchers from the Biofeedback Society have been exploring that. But just think about it. We actually train beforehand with technology to actually guide our dream to a better state. And there seem to be pretty strong incorporations for any input, but why not have an input where we're facing fears? That's a pretty smart input, right? So a little bit more research, and certainly some devices could be focused towards that. This is one of my personal wishes for maybe where some of this can head. Dreams can come true if hopefully this hotel company or travel company doesn't mind me borrowing their little ad. Just a little bit of science behind it, in case there's some folks who don't go too much into precognition or premonition, or let's say a sense that somehow sees future. This is research by Dean Radin. Some of you know the pre-sensing experiment, but just quickly describing. So let's say computer screen, researcher, and subject. For 7.5 seconds, a blank screen shows up for the subject. For about 3 seconds, a photo or image shows up, and then about 10 seconds, the blank screen again. So let's say somewhere around 20 seconds for per trial or per photo. And here's the response, averaged over quite a number of subjects. And you can see here the calm and emotional photos. So when you see 2 different kinds of lines here, and maybe the pink, if you can see the pink color, that's an emotional photo that was shown to the subject. Maybe a scene that's graphic or violent or sexual or something that would really get an activated response. And then I guess the more gray with a little triangle or the little diamond, that would be a calm photo, scenes of nature or quiet or numbers or text or something. So that's kind of the procedure or the experiment there. So here's the interesting thing. So this is GSR. Somebody might be responsible, the lie detector, kind of measurement, galvanic skin response, usually a little electrical resistance between 2 fingers or other places. It would be pretty interesting to note that the pink line and let's say the diamond line, the non-pink line, are more obviously are separated. In other words, the diamond line of the low non-emotional photos should be lower. But how, before the picture shows, here's the stimulus line right here, so this is when the image appeared. How, by a large number of subjects, is the response, like the emotional response, much lower before the image appears? Just let that sink in for a sec. Statistically quite significant over quite large number of trials. The person's, I'm interpreting a little bit here, somehow sensing the photo before it appears on the screen. Their motion, their, let's say, body response is showing much less emotional response before the image appears. So interesting that science can kind of start to show something along the lines of what might be premonition or sensing ahead before an event. There's probably all kinds of other interesting things. Did the researcher know the photo was? Was the photo randomly chosen? Everything. But let's say over a large number of subjects, something's going on that could be worth further exploration. And I presented just to offer a little bit of our language, let's say our culture's language, science, at least one of the languages I like to speak, a way of showing that, wow, there might be something to prescience or precognitive dreams. And that could be an exploration, technologies that can help detect premonitions, or maybe during a lucid dream stimulate tuning into the inner sense of that's free from time, maybe distant past too, or maybe clairvoyance, which according to some sources of wisdom says that clairvoyance, premonition, and telepathy are actually the same inner sense. To yet be proven, but wouldn't that be cool if technology could help stimulate that? This is kind of another potential use of dreams here. I'll tell you a little lucid dream I had. I think I wrote this one into Nightlight newsletter. If Stephen's still there, maybe he remembers reading it. But I went down, let's see. I'll try to tell the dream. I'm in a mall or some kind of building and I leave and I remember, oh, I'm supposed to bring back this was in Beverly D'Urso's dream group because she had a lucid group.
Yes.
A wonderful woman too. She was one of the prime research subjects at Stanford, right, Stephen? I think I heard.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just hearing that I'm being pulled away for dinner.
Oh, okay.
But
I'm glad that you joined us. And would you like me to reach out to you to sort of see if we can set up a talk or a presentation on this group?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So we should talk about sort of like format and what kinds of things we could talk about, because it's, I don't really like, I'm not going to much feel like I just want to talk about this stuff. No, I want to see if we can find ways to get things to happen.
Sure.
So yeah,
okay. Well, that's a pretty good focus. I would put you
Yeah.
in touch with Brian, who's the organizer, and I think that'd be a great focus. Like new projects. Let's coordinate. Let's collaborate. He likes that.
Totally.
Well, good.
Yeah,
I'm for it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And yeah, thanks, Stephen, for joining and contributing. And yeah, definitely.
And all your years of research. And congrats on your amazing Lifetime Achievement Award from the ASD, by the way. Very significant, and very few people get that.
Only the ones that are putting out to pasture,
Yeah, well, there's been some weird relationships in the past, but let's just say the current generation really recognizes and honors your life's devotion. And I'm one of those, by the way.
Well, thank you. So, okay. Well, then, anyway, the ball is not in my court, right?
It is. I'll bat it to you tomorrow, probably, or maybe after Valentine's Wednesday, let's say.
Oh, well, I was saying, no, I'm not doing something until you do something.
Right.
That's what that means.
If you have my address and reach out to me, I'm glad to also respond or just connect you directly. So either way.
Yeah.
But,
well, you are the guys that got it organized. You should tell me.
Yeah. We'll connect with you for sure.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Thanks again for joining. I'm sure a lot of people are really happy. By the way, I don't know if you saw them all, but you got lots of love emojis and laughter and stuff for some of your shares. So I think it's a pretty open-minded group to your amazing ideas.
Well, I may you put this up on YouTube, right? So I can look at it.
I don't know if it's on. You'll have to check with the organizer, who I'll put you in touch with.
They usually put these up. Yeah.
So I can take a look at it and see what it was all about.
Yeah, and what the other ones have been like, and you can kind of choose your topic in relation to that.
Yeah, no, exactly, because I want to say things that would clarify some missing pieces, because there's definitely some of those. So, well, I look forward to it then. So,
All
Thank
right,
you.
like PEACE, right?
Yes,
Right.
indeed.
Okay, well, I'd say a warm hello to your the person who made dinner there, who I know well, I believe.
Then, yes.
Yes. All
Okay.
right. Well, anyways, thanks
Aloha.
Aloha, yeah.
Again.
And
We
what I do
could-
is push that little button, and you can't end this video call yet. Just leave the call.
it can mute and then
It's
go out
being
dinner,
recorded
whatever you
already.
like.
Okay.
I
So
think I can remove you here.
it's all right. Don't bother. It's not doing any harm because it just shows this S there, right?
Yeah, you can leave it on and ideally mute if there's not
That's
a
right.
noise.
Yeah, I will definitely mute. That's a good idea. So
Thanks. Great. Okay. Well, I always appreciate the dream, however it comes. So we got one of my mentors showing up today. I love the characters that show up in dreams, whether they're waking dreams or dreaming. And here's a character who showed up in this lucid dream I was just telling, leaving, I guess, on some kind of mall or something, and realized, oh, I'm to bring back a gift from the dream, from this lucid dream, to the dream group, the small dream group I was in. So I went to, there was nobody around. I went to a local building. I guess I'll tell the present tense. So I walk into the building and I see this pretty official kind of security person, maybe an officer looking there. And I said, I know this sounds funny, but do you have a message for the dream group? Because after all, this is a lucid dream here. And this person really scrutinizes, looks me up and down for a little while. I know I'm kind of waiting. And then says, well, you'll have to fill out a form first. And then I woke up. And hopefully you get the joke faster than I did. But after a while, I realized, oh my God, and had a good laugh. I did have to fill out a form to deliver that message. And in fact, it was my physical form, so I could deliver the message. And I didn't really realize it was the message because I wasn't really into filling out the form. But I guess I filled out the form if I can tell you now, right? So this is an example of what I think could be an interesting way to sort of go, maybe not an obvious use of technology, but how about get lucid dreaming into entertainment? So reaching more than one person with some of the like real-time dreams, maybe have a little bit more of the recent research study of math and dreams, if you know about that one. Maybe more input to people's dreams to have kind of like entertaining or different actions chosen from the waking world, some more interactive. Just because I'm talking on the topic, it is not impossible. I often get asked on radio or media interviews, it's not impossible to do a visual kind of video out. I'm using the word loosely, but a video out jack from dreams. And that's definitely being done and researched. It's not like HD or 4K at this point. But some Japanese researchers have got what I found surprisingly sort of close images to what the dreamer said they were dreaming. And how did they do it? They actually put a whole bunch of electrodes on the visual cortex at the back of the head, I guess outside, so EEG, and started getting a reading of, I guess, multiple EEG over that part of the brain, and then matched up, I think, something like 10,000 YouTube videos with people wearing EEG, and just did a, more or less, what do you call that, pattern recognition to find which videos matched what the dreamer was dreaming, and then they showed a visual of what they assumed or guessed the dreamer might be dreaming. And the reports were surprisingly accurate. And once the report came, the written text, you could see that the image of like person or street sign or walking or, very rough things actually did show up on the sort of video out jack. So are dreams public? I don't know. Are they private? Maybe not as much as we think. Could it be a pretty interesting use of future technology? Why not? That's the video out jack. What about video in or audio in and other senses? Who knows? Maybe smell and stuff. So these questions can be just open-ended ones, but I think they're interesting to ask. And so I kind of used a fun, entertaining dream to show you that. And what I personally think, whoops. Let's see if I can show there. Slow fade in. This is an example of somebody who, like me, I think, was a bit of a thinkaholic, if you forgive me, Stefan. Gave permission to share this story. But certainly I've been a thinkaholic for many years, and I joke a little bit about it, but let's say stuck in my head, pretty objective, provability, logic, intellect, hopefully going a little bit more into heart now over the years and over the many relationships and lessons. But one of the students I was working with, Stefan, was an engineer, Silicon Valley, and said, oh, I love this lucid dreaming stuff and the mask and technology's pretty neat and stuff. So I said, well, you can certainly use the technology, but I also will coach you on some, let's say, empowering techniques where you don't need to pay money or have a gizmo necessarily, although they do help, but you can have it without. And he said, okay, great. And I suggested a few goals or targets or let's say experiments to try. And the one he seemed to like was like exploring, I said, your brain with your dream hands, you know, kind of moving your hands through your head and seeing if you can see what your brain or your eyes look like with touch. He thought that was kind of cool. So I guess that first week he got really excited, inspired a lucid dream, his first ever, he said. And he said, well, I like the idea that Craig had. I remembered it as a dream. And he said, go right away and do your experiment. Or sometimes you emotionally get too excited and wake up. So he remembered, he had his memory with him. He said, oh yeah, I wanted to explore brain. But he said he got distracted right away by a light coming from his chest. So he said, well, I didn't follow the experiment of the brain, but I did look down at my chest and I saw this interesting light and I reached my hands in there. And he said, as I believe, actually have the written text. Let me see if I can read it. I can probably keep showing you that screen and read it because I like to get it accurate. So this is his report. So from the actual dreamer's mouth. I see ex-coworker Hardy standing right in front of me and it hits me. Wow, this must be a dream. Hardy had just left a week ago, so he went back to Germany, so he couldn't be at the office. I know exactly what I consciously want to do next, and I try the experiment to move my hand through the body or the brain. There's nothing, no resistance until my hand moves close to my heart and my attention's drawn into the heart area. I zoom in closer. There's this beautiful light everywhere, this warm, cozy feeling. I see all the light around my heart. Wow. I'm drawn in more. A really magical moment, like being drawn into, sort of in quotes, real life for the first time. Everything is so vivid. The feeling is so intense that it starts to awaken me, just the feeling. And then I feel the dream state fading. I can't hold on to it. Finally, I do wake up. But how beautiful. I lay perfectly still, having this like powerful afterglow, intense moment still with me, slowly fall back asleep. End of dream. And then he adds on the next day, I go back to those memories of the night and I relive them. It now feels to me like I've seen a glimpse of what I guess, this is his language, my true beautiful self or soul, completely unconditioned, just pure love, life, God, whatever word you want. Veils of illusion have been lifted for a short moment, but what an intense moment, tears running on my face as I remember it. I feel one with myself, start to realize it could mean to really be connected to this powerful source within me, like more and more, and how it could change everything, how priorities would change completely. And the contrast with my day-to-day life at the work is really obvious and sudden. And I think, who is this other person that I'm usually when I'm caught up in life's illusion? That's his language. This person that feels so heavy, stuck in constant thoughts, worries, technical problems. Could I just realize all other people around me must have the same beautiful essence? How could I ever be mad at one of them if they do me wrong, or if I only remember their true inner selves in those moments? So that's kind of his experience, and for him, and he continued to say it was life-changing throughout the teleclass. So just think about that technology that can really help for some deep spiritual and maybe even like body level emotional states. It's not necessarily just like mental, intellectual, or consciousness, but let's go right to like feeling states, which is consciousness, certainly. And there's certainly some out there. The HRV is a pretty strong one, heart rate variability. And there's probably a lot of others that I don't have time to mention here, but I think it's a good general direction. Start to use our culture's gift of technology towards spiritual exploration. Another way here that I guess different yogis would be very happy with, different spiritual explorers, awaken the Kundalini or the different energies, or maybe the Tibetans might say have more access and practice with the clear light. So there's lots of different, I guess, slight different directions, but inner explorations, expansions of self, soul, consciousness, the chakras, etc. So not just sort of Groundhog Day level experiences of, you remember the movie Groundhog Day? For those who saw it, it's a great movie. For those who didn't, check it out. But it shows different levels of experiences. Maybe nobody else noticed this, but I noticed that in order, they actually go through the chakras in that movie, from like base chakra, food, to sexual chakra, to power chakra, money, and et cetera, up the chakras. But imagine if technologies could help us get some of these experiences and really integrate it for human evolution and personal joy and evolution, and maybe eventual freedom from all the cares and concerns. And if you're a Tibetan yogi, maybe a full clear light or rainbow body practice at death. So that kind of wraps up what I'm sharing. If you want to check out some of my work, I guess 4,000 hours of research, interviews, and lots of writing embodied into a book here, all about popular artists, mostly musical artists, who actually dreamt some of the biggest hits, life and death, career decisions, premonitions, psychic dreams, etc. There's a pretty interesting book with all footnotes, I think 750 plus. So as much as I can document it. And then if you want to follow any of my work, I do offer private trainings, counseling, and also teleclasses. This is me in Thailand offering a teleclass. I have a little bit of freedom geographically sometimes, so it's not the worst job in the world. And sometimes a little bit more in academic settings or business settings or technology labs, etc. And there's a few links if you want to follow in a couple of events. So hopefully I respected everybody's time along with the extra time that was added. And we have room for questions. Is that true, Brian?
Yeah, I'm definitely willing to stick around if you are, and I'm sure a few other people would be too that have questions. So yeah, are you able to stay around for a while, Craig?
Yeah, I'd love to. Just
right,
know that people have been pretty devoted with me. I'll show up for you guys with pleasure. By the way, I want to offer everybody, I know that when I focus on it, and if we're focusing on it tonight, when you focus a lot on lucid dreaming, especially before sleep, if you're in sort of North America, you might just have a reality check or a lucid dream tonight. A little friendly suggestion. Sometimes people have one when I give that suggestion or reminder. So if that is of interest, maybe tonight, or hopefully sometime soon.
The lucid seeds have been planted. I definitely see that if I'm reading a lucid dreaming book before bed or participate in one of these events. So hopefully we have some lucid dreams tonight across the board here. And yeah, thanks again, Craig, for joining today and preparing the presentation and telling us stories about the NovaDreamer and lucid dreaming technology. And definitely very fun to hear you banter back and forth with Stephen LaBerge too. Kind of unexpected banter. Very fun to see that unfold. So thanks for rolling with that too. And I want to open it up mostly to the people that have joined, but I'll start with one question just to kind of get it going. And then if people can either drop their questions in the chat or just raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll just kind of go around. So yeah, we've mentioned a few times on this, there seems to be some demonstrated demand for lucid dreaming technology, or I think you called it a primed market before. And NovaDreamer, like that came out in the 1990s, but still we haven't had this device that's really, come to fruition to like reliably enable people to have lucid dreams. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think the technology is still stagnant even today, a few decades after the NovaDreamer?
This is directed to me, I guess.
Yeah.
By the way, other people, I'm not the expert. We have lots of amazing minds, and I love to call it the wisdom bank here. So anybody else, feel free to type on the chat so that we're a group expert here. But from my point of view, why? One is that the challenge of bringing like an invention to like business level, let's say mass market, isn't obvious. I've actually run into a number of people who have like prototypes. I have other prototypes and lots of inventions waiting. By the way, anybody who wants to partner on some of those things, write me privately. But the sort of business step, as you know, with like Aura and everything, it's quite a big step. Example, German researchers recently had developed a device which did EEG and tried to stim, more or less, let's say, a more modern and more featured version of NovaDreamer, and they came to ask my suggestion. I said, well, just make sure you want to choose this as a life path, or at least let's say 7-year career, because if you don't commit to it, just the customer support, the whole marketing, and maybe some of the repercussions, if there are any legally or any other stuff, it's way more than just designing a prototype. And so there probably are tons of pretty successful, interesting ones out there that maybe didn't get too much light of day. Or just partner with somebody who can follow through that with integrity. That's another key element. I believe, this is a personal belief, but if someone's sort of not either called or sort of has like something in their life path that they could really sort of have this land well, and maybe a mix of different skills, including empathy, appreciation, and maybe some of the technical and some of the lucid dreaming skills. And then also some kind of, at least a bit of business sense, how to partner with finance people, etc. Then I say probably don't go down that road. So I told them, unless you guys really want to choose this as kind of a business, maybe just keep it to researchers and make like 20 to 50 prototypes and make a really nice impact in sleep labs and with easy test devices. And I believe they went that route mostly so far. I forget the name of it, forgive me, but not that I'm right, but I was just encouraging them to think the big picture that I learned the hard way before I knew. So one reason that it's a bit of a job to get it to the mass market. Probably lots of other reasons. What do you think, Brian? Because you're in the field.
I think a lot of it is just fundamentally we don't understand the human brain and how lucidity arises in the brain. And we're getting better at understanding that. But it seems like right now it's a lot of kind of trial and error as far as like different stimulation modalities apply to different parts of the brain. We're not totally sure what's going to happen. So it's like, okay, let's try this. Let's see what happens. Did it increase lucidity? Yes, no, I'm not sure. So it's a combination of like not really knowing what the right targets are or like the right stimulation are. And it seems like we're not well anchored on the fundamental kind of science to then develop technology on top of. And I think the more studies that we can have with like more people involved, we can get better kind of signal in the noise of are certain things working or not too. So I think all of that will come. I tend to be an optimist on that, but we shall see. So I see a few hands up, people with questions, and just kind of going in order.
I see a visual hand up there. Is that true, Anya? Or is she just like scratching her hair?
Yeah, I see. Oh yeah, I see.
If you don't know where the raise hand button, which is, you can just go. Like
I see Ken's got his hand raised. He's first on my list as I see it. So I'll go to Ken first, and then we'll just kind of go down the list.
Well, hey, thanks for a great presentation. Yeah, it was just fascinating to see that whole perspective. I've never gotten my hands on a NovaDreamer, and I want to know, how does it do the REM sleep detection? What is the sensor? Because there's no gel, right?
No, it doesn't have any electrical connection other than maybe the output jack, but that's not connected to the body. To the body, it's all infrared. So like maybe newer models will have, I don't know if the Supernova or some of the other ones, but the original one that was kind of the big mass market one doesn't have any accelerometer, didn't have anything, didn't have temperature, etc. So it was just infrared eye movement sensing, and a little bit clunky. It's not camera. It's sort of like an IR beam getting interrupted.
An IR beam. So is it like the mouse, basically?
Yeah, the mouse does a bit of, depending what kind of mouse. The mouse does pattern recognition on a surface, so it looks. Yeah. Some mouses look for sort of visual. That would be sort of more a camera than an IR beam. But
so, was it the IR beam going from the side, and that, like, I guess I'm not understanding. Yeah, I guess I'm.
That's a good question, because if I go down to the actual of it, I mean, there's some interesting answers. If I just go quickly, technically, no, it's just an IR beam that's bouncing off the eye. But, IR pierces the skin a little bit, so is it detecting the IR movements? And is the IR affecting electrical signal, which goes through the foam, because there's a very high multiple amplifier in there. And there was some very strange effects going on, like when room lights were on, because there's 60 hertz. So there's, let's say, a lot of possible artifact. But the simple idea, the intention was that there's just an IR beam, and then amplified quite a bit the motion changes. And it was on one eye. It was sideways originally in the Dreamlight and the Dreamlink. And then I guess in the second version, NovaDreamer, I said, this was more for like mass market appeal because that was where I was aiming. Let's do up and down, because then I can make the mask narrower, and when somebody's sleeping on their side, they won't have this thing pushing against their face in the bed, and it won't go off to the side and that kind of. So it ended up working pretty much the same up and down. So, but you could try other beam directions. Somehow, you know, picking up the eye movements, I say, is a pretty essential part to any lucid dreaming device. You can get it from EEG, might be able to get it from respiration temperature, but in the visual dreams, where you're most likely to sort of see a visual cue, that would be pretty important.
You know, so I'm a psych prof at Acadia, and I work with an engineering team. And so we did a mask, you know, it was like a ski mask, and it had an IR sensor, like from a mouse, on the eye, basically shining there. And it, you know, we tested it a bit. It did seem to pick up kind of, I would say, eyelid flutter maybe. And now I'm working with another team at Dalhousie, another engineering, these are student teams, right?
Yeah.
But we're working, they're interested in using basically like an EOG, but without any gel. It would just basically use these contacts and trying to get eye movement that way. So anyways, I've been trying to get an eye movement sensor. So anyways, I was curious. I guess I'm curious to really know.
So there's somebody answering my question of like, you know, why isn't this out there more? Probably because just like getting the actual sensing and testing down takes like months to years to have anything reliable, let alone when to cue, right? We're not even talking about cueing yet. I'll just tell you, because maybe this will speed up your research. There is a sensor. I'm not sure it's still produced, but I really liked it. It was a whole different idea for eye movements. I'll try to remember who it was. I got a copy. So I could probably get another if necessary. But it actually had a very thin piezoelectric film from kind of a base that went on the eyelid.
I worked with Bob Stickle and Alan Hobson. They had this nightcap, but it would be like this piezoelectric that you would tape to your eyelid.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, it was actually very sensitive, but it was a disposable, so it was a consumable.
Yeah, it's not a mass market, but
yeah,
it works good
and you'd wear it and your eye was kind of like, you look like you had a droopy eye. So I have another question, and that's about the patent. So what was the patent for?
Well, you can, maybe I'll quickly answer that. You can check it on the patent database. Just look up REM detection or something like that. I think it has a few different claims on there. Certainly it has the sensing on there, but some of the signaling and feedback is also, I think, on there. By the way, by now, even though it's one of the whatever it is, 2001 or whatever the cutoff was, it was one of the longer patents, like the 18 years or whatever. Now they're shorter, but I'm pretty sure it's run out by now. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, but there might be others. I haven't really followed all the patents on this. By the way, pretty much everything's been done, you know, like any of these sensing rings and all that. We have prototypes and research from. It's just a question of who took it to market. And I mean, when it gets to that level of patent, I sort of go to the Marconi and Tesla discussion. I don't know if you're too familiar, but you know, Tesla said, no, Marconi's doing good work, just let him do his stuff. And then he went in, got the Nobel Prize and a lot of the patents. So I was like, whoops. You know, it ends up being pretty important to have your work documented and go get the patent if you're thinking of taking it to a larger public. But then how much time you want to spend on that versus the actual research. So kind of choosing your best skill set. And maybe partner with somebody, maybe just go for it and give it out. I think, wasn't it last month, Brian? You said there was kind of you gave, what do they call that? Free open source project. So many different ways to do it. If you just want to reach and help people, open source could be your model.
Right. And thanks for the questions, Ken. Good questions.
Yeah.
I see Ryan up next. Are you still there, Ryan?
Oh, I am definitely still here. Hello.
Hey, Ryan.
Greg, I am sure
met you this summer. Of course, I remember you. We had a great connection.
Yes, we did. And it was really great hearing Stephen again. Oh my God, Dr. LaVerge. It was great for him to show up. And I would look forward to any presentations that he would be willing to do for us, definitely. And so I obviously missed the first hour, but I'm going to be a responsible person to go back and watch it later. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on the future. Like, what do you think is the next step? So we've gotten into this area where we have various technologies for detecting REM sleep, and they're technologies for basically targeted lucidity reactivation type stuff, the TLRs, and queuing that has been discussed for a while. But where do you think is the next step? Like, what do you think is the next thing to learn about in terms of like the neuroscience, or in terms of how the brain works, how lucid dreaming works? What do you think is the next big thing for people to try to figure out
or figure in, right? Because some of the greatest creative insights and inventions come from dreams, like the movie camera did, or at least was inspired by a big dreamer, Edison. Anyway, great question, Ryan. I don't know if I have any answers other than my personal thoughts, maybe some experiences around it. My little part of the presentation at the end was actually directed pretty much towards what I call the benefits or applications the technology could be applied to, and that's where my personal strongest interest is. Okay, so there's going to be some developments on sensing and maybe helping to trigger the lucid dreams, but then what? And so I aimed a little bit towards the then what. How can we make it serve?
I do the same. I'm really big on the then what. Like my kind of thing is, I'm a conceptualizer. I like to think about what would happen if, and then try to follow it to a conclusion. And the more information I have, the more I do with it. And so I give a thought to a whole bunch of different things. Like, for example, what would happen if we had technology that allowed for, this is way down the road from here, obviously. I don't think it's really close by, but, full-fledged communication between people who are dreaming. Could you induce a sort of shared experience from the fact that people are able to communicate, to share their surroundings with one another, maybe create representations of each other, and perform actions somewhat in tandem with each other over the internet? Like, what do you think where do you think that's going in terms of things like Elon Musk Neuralink and some of these types of technologies that are coming towards the forefront, and where that research is ultimately going? How far away do you think we are from having the ability to communicate with each other like that over the internet in a complex and easy to understand way?
Well, just the communication, I would say, is already here and there, or whatever there is, but let's say already available. Probably not in a mass market sense. I think I see Deshelle on there. Hey, Deshelle, who I met this summer. She's kind of developing a pretty cool device, if I'm allowed to say, because I know she shared it publicly, to help tweet from a lucid dream. At the Sacré-Cœur Dream Research, I had a device that I designed that would actually turn on a light from the dream, and it did. In fact, the weirdest little side story of that is the time I actually triggered or like gave the eye movement signal to turn on the light. It was kind of recognizing rapid eye movements by infrared. There was an earthquake in Montreal, like a 5.6, at the exact moment I signaled in the dream, which is super rare. Once every 7 years or something. I was like, what? I better like check what I'm doing here. Am I like doing some earth-shaking kind of research? I don't want to get too ego-bound, but I started to wonder, like, there's some subtler stuff going on here. Anyways, just back to your question. Just if you don't know about it, check out the recent research where they sort of did mathematics that communicated to the dreamer.
I've read those studies, actually.
You know that?
Oh, yes, I do.
So that's one way. There's certainly some great communications coming two-way, the proof, but the proof where you used to do eye movement signal, the leg kicks and other stuff. So that's kind of back from the dream. As for dreamer to dreamer, I think you'd have to kind of define also, but define a specific goal, because what exactly are you trying to have a mutual dream?
I started off, I actually have concepts for the basics. So the basics would start, I started with something really simple that you could communicate between people to try to have them understand. And I came up with the Fibonacci number sequence, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason that I chose that is because if you follow the sequence correctly, you could determine it's based off of what you hear, and then you follow the sequence instead of just repeating the numbers. You actually try to calculate, follow the sequence. And so you could determine if actual communication is taking place or just repetition of something. So there's certain things you could try to do. And I actually came up with my own numbering system because I think Morse code's numbering system is inefficient. So, but this is something I've been thinking about since like August, actually.
Hey, you heard it here first. Ryan's numbering. Do you have a name?
I do have a name, Ryan, but I don't have a name for it. I created a table of Morse code letters translated to numbers so that no more than 3 dots or dashes are used at any given time for a number instead of 5.
All right. I love your visionary sort of aspect too. And I like that you dream and ask big questions. Like, that's pretty cool. For example, in my teleclasses, I guess at least more than once, I've had students who communicate very well with each other, and it's sort of provable. That's when it gets interesting, because how do you know, right? I believe couples and anybody who's like family actually communicates all the time in dreams. But is it something that they're aware of and that they could later prove to somebody else? That gets interesting from sort of mutual dreaming. In fact, one of my friends and colleagues who worked at Lucidity for a little while, Linda Magaillon, you might not know the name, but she wrote a book called Mutual Dreaming that might interest you and some others here. So it explores different aspects, but probably not the technology aspect. I say we get a video out and then a video in, Jack, and then we just connect the two across internet. We got some pretty cool, like, what were you dreaming? Oh, well, I was dreaming what you were, because I was watching your dream, and this kind of thing. We'll see. If you can imagine it, I think it starts a little bit with the imagining part, maybe the science fiction or the experiment idea, but it could really help. I'm not sure what the benefit is yet to everybody, except excitement, play. That's kind of neat. But if there's a benefit, that could drive it, like financially.
I could see, like I think I mentioned in the chat earlier, how exciting would that be as an experiment, as this community, to try to get Lucid together and prove some of these mutual dreams, if nothing else, to motivate participation in that kind of study. But a good use case for the ability to detect lucidity when a person has reached that state, and then signal out to somebody else to like then send the cue to stimulate.
Lucid over there. Like Brian's, just imagine this. I'm just riffing off you, Brian.
Yeah.
2 months from now program where somebody's got the rudimentary, or let's say prototype device. The person signals from their dream, and 25 people go lucid at that moment because they're connected through the network.
Yep, the Lucid net.
And they all do some kind of big proof, and I don't know, get 25 of Ryan's numbers and put them in order, and then bring them up. And we have a pretty nice proof.
Applications of that, for our understanding of consciousness and nature of reality. If we can prove that at scale, I'm not aware of anything like that being done. It's a lot of anecdotal examples of mutual dreams, which when you put them together, it's difficult to refute. But imagine that kind of experiment at scale. Not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I think it's something that's worthy of our community to explore in the future here. All right, I'm going down the list here on the raised hands. I want to try to cycle through the people here. I see Just Philip is next. Are you there?
Hey, Philip. Maybe mute, unmute.
Looks like he's unmuted. We're not able to hear you if you are talking. So we could. I see Anya up next. So we could go to Anya and then cycle back to Philip.
Oh, I think I just heard Philip for a sec. Just make sure your headset's plugged in well, Philip. I've had that problem before on these. Could be that. But otherwise, Anya.
No, go on, Philip. I think we can hear you now, right?
I heard him for a second, but he'll come in a second. So go ahead, I'd say, Anya.
All right. So I actually have two questions. The first one relates to the fact, so you spent a good deal of time in your presentation talking about premonitions and precognitions, but you haven't exactly connected that all the way to your personal experiences with lucid dreaming. So I'm curious, the question is, do you have any interesting experiences that are pretty prominent in terms of having some precognitive dreams that were potentially lucid dreams? And could you share some of the most vivid examples of those? And the second question, I guess, is very, very similar.
Can we start with one?
Yeah, but I think the second question might have the same answer. So yeah, they're related. And that is that you mentioned your experience with the your near-death experience, and I've been listening a lot recently to people's experiences like that, and that fact that after those, they usually very often develop certain other skills in their minds and psychically. and with lucid dreams, like you said, that your lucid dream started after that experience. So I'm curious if you also have other anything else that you started experiencing after your near-death experience, and maybe the precognitions, premonitions somehow are related to that.
Okay, great. And thanks for spending time. It sounds like your passion's there. Like maybe you'd like to learn how to have some more of those experiences and precognition. I'll first offer the idea just for you and everybody from my experience and others that I've worked with and seen. And this is a belief, so you don't have to plant this in your entire garden, but maybe just plant a little experimental version of this idea or belief and see if it works for you. And that is that precognition or any inner sense, let's say inside info can be powerful, right? Tuning into the future, brings some responsibility. So really, literally the ability to respond differently because we know something ahead. And that's not obvious, but that's something to kind of organically grow rather than 500 miles an hour learn, just so you don't get way more than you can handle. I'll just offer that as a little precursor. And by the way, on the lucidity tips that I shared at Stanford and got sent out in every NovaDreamer box, some from Stephen's book and some from other places that are now kind of common all over the internet. One of the key techniques that I a little bit later added was make sure you stay grounded also. In other words, make sure you eat well, sleep well, and don't end up kind of going off your rocker or anything a little bit out of the ordinary. So if we're exploring, I guess, these inner senses and inner experiences, it's good to have a physical life and eat well, stay socially connected, sleep enough. So that's my first and most important answer. As for experiences, I don't mind sharing one. And maybe more about what I call inner senses generally. You can certainly read up from Seth, S-E-T-H, who speaks about the inner senses. And one of those inner senses is precognition, as he defines it, or I guess as the channel spoke it, Jane Roberts. And then there's others, so that could be interesting. But there's lots written about precognition and that kind of stuff around. As I define it, I just kind of say something that could be a value that I see outside my current focus point of identity. It's a very general kind of maybe weird way, clunky way of saying it, but let's say if I can tune into something, then I must be bigger than who I think I am right now or at that moment. So my identity shifts or expands or has some special function activated or something. In other words, let's say a larger self, deeper mind, lots of ways of saying it. One of those is precognition. Example, this is from a lucid dream because you asked. By the way, you can have plenty of precognition without lucidity. In fact, I have them every day, pretty much. I'm not kidding. That's no exaggeration. Pretty much daily, sometimes a couple times a day, or morning or night. And stuff that I can check and test later. But obviously, I speak and teach about this, so it's a little more common probably. But 1 out of 3 people say that they've had verified or something they believe came true after they dreamt or intuited it very clearly. So that's pretty common out there. When I had a lucid dream, I thought, oh, okay, I'll ask about the future. And at the time I was single. So I said, dear Dreamweaver, when am I going to meet my next major partner? I guess in this case, I was thinking female partner, maybe romantic partner, maybe life partner. I don't know. I kind of put it out there to the dream. And it's maybe not a big scientific report here, but it's interesting nonetheless because it proved out. So you have to remember, I'm telling you in sequence in kind of a short 1 minute, but about 2 weeks after I'd given this request, well, actually, I should say what the dream was because it was pretty specific. I think, can't exactly remember now if it was a background voice, which is usually a strong hint that it's strong intuition or a deeper self, or a guide person character. But either way, the content was on the platform at the Palace of Fine Arts. That was the answer. I was like, whoa. I woke up. That's pretty damn specific. Usually I get a little more vague response from the conscious, what's the Powerball winning numbers? Well, we can't really tell you because in this case, it was really specific. I was like, whoa, platform. So at the time in Montreal, I thought, well, there's not really a Palace of Fine Arts. There's a Museum of Fine Arts. A platform, does that mean I go there and stand up on stage and I don't know, say I'm single or what? How does it work? So I kind of said, I'll just have to put it in the maybe or inbox and we'll see. And I guess forgot about it, but I'm telling you in sequence. I got this letter in the mail from Secret Admirer, maybe a few weeks later. Secret Admirer, and all that was in there, I couldn't recognize any handwriting, was a ticket to this show. I was like, I was going to go away that weekend, but it was just too intriguing. And it was for flamenco music, which I like. to go to the show. So I showed up and I went to the show. When I got there and just standing almost at the seat where my ticket was, I realized, oh my God, this is Place des Arts. That's the name of the performing arena, which in French means the Palace of Arts. But I hadn't connected because it's a French name and palace. And then as I came to see the actual seat number, it ended up being on the balcony, which is kind of like a platform, right? And I sat down beside a person who was like, ha, 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 that's cute. And said, yeah, I haven't really told you, but I have a crush on you. And long story short, I had a fun connection with that person. So there's a little bit of a precog example that maybe won't go into the scientific provability realm, but that for me was way more than just random chance and has some fun hints about, we can't always know all the exact details, but sometimes we can get helpful inside info, which I think goes for all dreams. All dreams can offer benefits for our future, pretty much all dreams. But sometimes in the middle of exam, we don't want to get all the answers, or else we're not going to be a good student and grow and learn. So in the middle of tough life challenges, we may not always get all the perfect, clear answers, but sometimes we can get pretty good hints for sure. I hope that was insightful.
Yeah, great. Oh, we got Philip now too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my mic started working.
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, so I had a question for Dr. LaBerge. I'm clear, yeah. I had a question for Dr. LaBerge. I have been kind of digging deep into the lucid dreaming community side of things as of late. I've, heard of the International Association for Lucid Dreams. I believe Ryan's been there, so I've heard. So I would have signed up for the 40th annual one. I was curious who else would have liked to join in Oregon.
In Oregon, the Ashland, Oregon.
Yes.
Thanks, Philip.
I see
Go ahead,
Dan,
Brian.
your hand.
I think you're getting some raised hands there.
I'm going.
Yeah, Dashell was at the one last summer too. Just so we're clear, in case people want to go, you can check it out at iasd.org.
I think it's asdreams.org. Yes, asdreams.
Yeah,
I plan to go. I just need to start getting the money for it, but I plan to go.
I have a very important announcement about that. All of the hotel rooms in the hotel are filled up. So there's a hotel room across the street and another one. There's like another or like a town-wide conference going on. So if you're going, you really have to figure out your hotel room situation ASAP, especially if you want to be in walking distance. And I didn't even want to tell anyone because I haven't done it yet, and I want to get a hotel room before you guys do. But yeah, just letting you guys know, it's an unusual, unfortunate situation with the hotel room. So you guys have to go fast with that.
Okay, so we'll give Dashell until noon tomorrow to book, and then everybody dive in. How's that? No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
That's some good information. Thanks.
Yeah, but check out the website asdreams.org if you want to learn about it. But annual conference of, let's say, a few hundred, 200-300 dream enthusiasts, researchers, experts, obviously some folks who are into technology there too. So that's a pretty neat networking event. I think it's in, what dates? I don't know, June, July.
Yeah, it's like I just dropped a link in the chat here. It says June
22nd of June.
Yep, that's it. Nice. Maybe we can get a big Airbnb for the Tech for Dreaming community if the hotel's out.
Rent out like a plane hangar and just sleep together and have our.
It would honestly be good if there was a group of us that wanted to go, if we could find a way to work out some form of like transportation and arrangement where we could kind of get back and forth, especially if we're all having to stay off site, because getting around isn't the easiest thing for everybody. So yeah.
I think there's actually a thing on IASC to help with that.
There's a ride share page and a room share page, yeah.
Nice.
But maybe Brian can sort of offer a side group for facilitating our specific group, which people may trust a little more if we know each other. That helps.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I still have to figure out if I'm able to go or not, but independent of that, people can coordinate, with the community. But I'm hoping to go too. And then
we get to meet Connor live. Is that true?
He'll probably stay home. Speaking of, I'm on nighttime duty tonight. He's kind of a late sleeper. So anyways, I might head out in like 10 minutes or so. just FYI. But even when I do that, I'm happy to keep the meeting open and people can keep talking as long as they want. But yeah, I saw Dash, you had your hand up. Do you still have a question?
Yeah. I wanted to know, Craig, do you think that is there any new research that you are aware of that you think, knowing now, would have improved the NovaDreamer? Or like, what would you improve on it? Like, let's say money wasn't an issue, just like your dream NovaDreamer.
All right, my guess here. If I'm Dashell thinking about designing a device, what should I do?
I have my own thoughts. I was curious if they were similar to yours.
Okay, great. Well, I'm sure the whole community has some great ideas on this. I would say multi-sensing, so not just infrared, which an NovaDreamer had, would be key. There's, by the way, check out Kickstarter or online. There's some devices that do multiple types of sensing. So that would be a pretty key factor. Definitely research the queuing. I think Aura and other groups have spent a lot of time really getting the sleep staging right, and maybe when the queuing can happen. You know, so longer research than just publishing it as soon as we can to get the investors happy. Also types of queues, like think of interesting things you can queue. Maybe you can queue over an internet like you're doing with the tweet, but maybe that can be like a mass market device or everybody starts tweeting to a central site, or I don't know, every kind of interesting way that the output can be interesting that we didn't really have at the time when I did. I mean, the internet started maybe a year after. It was really just started with like, I don't know if anybody remembers like Navigator. Oh my God. So some of the early browsers and the internet was just coming together. So internet would be a key part of it. I'd love to see something that sort of really empowered the applications. Like I said, sounds kind of vague to talk about, but what technology, just the question itself is good because that'll lead us down there. What technology or add-ons to a NovaDreamer-like device could really focus on specific benefits? The creative inspirations, you know, maybe help induce a certain creative state or face a nightmare. You know, the virtual reality is one, but maybe there's another way we can play a movie in the dream or something and then have the person face their fear directly, even if they didn't have that scenario going on. But just start to think of what are the applications? Could we enhance those with technology, the benefits? I'd love to see that. I don't know if that's too vague an answer, but I have some private projects going on, which maybe we can discuss privately, but usually under non-disclosure. So,
okay.
Sorry to have to say that.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds almost like we've talked before in the group about like a modular type of mat, which is probably really hard to do mass market, but like where you could like add on things really specific to you, or the sensors like work, you know, which are the sensors that you need for your specific, like maybe EOG works better for me, or you know, Ryan, you know, he's probably got, I don't know if a lot of you know Ryan, but in the group he's blind, so he has certain specific ways that would work better for him, right? So we always talk about like a modular device that like
a menu, a la carte, you know.
Right?
And I have the mask that works for a 6-foot afro, you know, or whatever.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. And I had another question, small question. Just like, is it possible to buy the NovaDreamer these days? And do I even need one? You said it's really similar to the REM-Dreamer Pro. If I have the REM-Dreamer Pro, is that pretty much the same as a NovaDreamer? Would I?
Well, I can't vouch for the algorithm, which is a pretty important part because they just did their best copy, I guess. But most of the functionality that I've seen is the same, or a couple improvements. They say they can sense eye movements, and maybe you can sort of trigger or have an output improve that you're lucid. You know, that strikes me as a little bit tough if it's just infrared beam sensing, because there's a lot of artifact there. But maybe that's possible, especially if they have other sensors added. So if you have one, that's probably about as good. In that regard. For the sensing, that'll be pretty tough to match the Dreamlight or NovaDreamer based on actual lucid dreaming lab research and sleep staging. But I'm sure there's some close calls now because it's been a long time since then with lots more research.
Oh, so there is there's no way to get the NovaDreamer these days. Like there's no like secret.
They're used on eBay, I think.
Oh, okay.
These places.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And So we've been going for a while. I'm going to cut the recording now, but I definitely don't want to stop the party if people are still, happy to stay on. But I will. Well, first, thank everybody for joining. I think that was a great session, Craig. So thanks again for joining, sharing your experiences. Yeah, very good kind of historian of the space here, the lucid dreaming technology space, which is like still pretty young, but brimming with potential. So I want to thank you again for showing up and being present and presenting and
very welcome
questions, and it was great. And
anybody who wants to contact me and maybe sort of in a little soundbite kind of elevator pitch some kind of project collaboration, I'll do my best. Maybe not on Valentine's Day, but in the next couple of weeks, I'll try to give a short response. If somebody's really passionate, I usually try to show up as I can. Maybe just directing you, but for example, Stephen had a lot of passion tonight, and we'll make sure that you guys get connected.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I'm going to hit stop here.